Chapter 2993. Within the Huang family's territory, Suyu helped treat the sinful lady's injuries. Fortunately, the sinful lady's body was special, and with just a simple treatment, she began to recover on her own. "I'm really sorry. My strength is too low, and I've dragged you down." The sinful woman apologized. Suyu hurriedly said, "Please don't say that. When I wasn't around, you were the one leading the cauldron. Why would I blame you?" After a pause, Suyu said, "Haven't you used the primordial energy I gave you?" When he had obtained the primordial energy from the famed Sword Sacred clan, he had given the sinful girl a drop of it. With the help of that power, sinful girl's cultivation should have increased by several levels. So why was she standing still? The sinful girl remained silent. Suyu furrowed his brows and asked, "Can you tell me where the primordial energy went?" It was clear that the sinful lady did not use the primordial energy, but it was unknown where she used it. "I can't tell you," sinful girl answered directly. Suyu was flabbergasted. Could it be that the sinful woman has used it for some unspeakable purpose? Is she trying to hide it? "What?" Suyu asked. The sinful lady said expressionlessly, "It's my freedom to use it wherever I want. Please don't ask anymore." Suyu did not speak any further, as he was somewhat displeased. No matter what, he had painstakingly obtained the primordial energy. Giving a drop to the sinful girl was because he hoped that she would use it wisely and improve her cultivation. But now, it seemed that the sinful girl did not cherish it. "Fine, it's up to you." Suyu stood up and said, "You can heal your injuries by yourself now. I will take my leave first." He left the secret healing room and stood in mid-air, looking at the area of light. The size of this place was actually not much smaller than the size of the Jiuzhou continent. It could accommodate all the living creatures that Suyu had collected along the way. Looking at the scene of them setting up camps and rebuilding their homes, Suyu felt a sense of warmth that he hadn't felt for a long time. A lifetime of instability, half of a lifetime of scheming. Only these creatures that had always followed him firmly could give him a trace of home harbor. "My old friend from Shenwei Island, where are they?" Suyu's gaze swept across the area and discovered an island in the middle of the sea. Many of the people of Mystic Moon Island had rebuilt their homes in the sea. Suyu sighed with emotion as he took a step forward and appeared in the sky above the island. Suyu turned into a stranger and entered the city as he watched the creatures quickly familiarize themselves with it and gain control of it. The bustling crowd was happily accepting the brand new territory. As Suyu strolled along, he felt the same way he did in the past. However, 200 years had passed, and the old friends of the Mystic Moon Island were all mortals. Their lifespans had long passed. The ones in front of him were actually the descendants of those old friends. "I heard that the royal prince is sick. I wonder if he can make it." "It's very difficult. In fact, the duke had already died of illness a year ago. It was all thanks to that fairy using the god due to prolong his life. But for those who have reached the end of their fates, it's futile no matter how we try to keep them." Suyu was shocked. The duke was Qin Xiener's father, the Duke of Xinyu. He felt a deep sense of shame. He was always on the move, so he didn't even have the time to care about his father-in-law. With a tap of his foot, Suyu appeared in a house. As soon as he entered, Suyu was stunned by the scene in front of him. In front of him was the mansion of the Duke of Xinyu from 200 years ago. The garden, the study, and the courtyard were all the same. He still remembered the scene in the courtyard, when Qin Xiener wore a cute pink dress, waving her little fist to show off to him. He still remembered the loving voice of the Duke of Xinyu in the study. He also remembered the scene in the garden, when he taught Xia Jingyu the concept, and Qin Xiener foolishly watching from the side. It all seemed like yesterday. It was so familiar, yet so distant and strange. "Who's here?" A hoarse voice came from the front yard. Suyu looked over. Even with the walls separating them, he could still clearly see the scene on the other side. A white-haired old man with striped face was lying peacefully on a bamboo chair, enjoying the afternoon sun. He held a fan in his hand, slowly fanning himself. His eyes were lonely as he looked at the boundless vault of heaven. "Who is it? Is my Xiener back?" He was the Duke of Xinyu. 200 years. Things remained the same, but people had changed. The flowers and grass were the same as they were 200 years ago, unchanged. Only the valiant county king had aged considerably. Su Yu's eyes were moist. He could feel that the Duke of Xinyu did not have much time left. This was not something that could be made up for by raising one's cultivation base or using all the elixirs in the world. Even as a mortal, it was already a miracle that he had lived to this day. "It's me," Su Yu said softly. He walked with the footsteps of a mortal, passing through the crescent door and arriving in front of the Duke of Xinyu. The Duke of Xinyu's eyes widened. He struggled to sit up, saying, "So, it's you, quick, come and sit." He pointed to the stool beside him, a smile finally appearing on his sickly face. Su Yu said shamefully, "I'm sorry, father-in-law. I can only see you now." The Duke of Xinyu's face did not show the slightest bit of blame, only boundless joy. "Silly child, you are now a ruler, shouldering the burden of the world. How could you have the time to see me?" Hearing this, Su Yu felt even more guilty. A ruler could care about the world, but not his father-in-law. "Where is Xiener? Why did she not come with you?" the Duke of Xinyu asked. Su Yu's body froze, unable to answer. Did he want the Duke of Xinyu, who was nearing the end of his life, to suffer the pain of losing his daughter again? After a moment of silence, under the Duke of Xinyu's expectant gaze, Su Yu said, "Xiener is fine, but she had no time to come." The Duke of Xinyu's eyes quickly dimmed, looking dispirited and lonely. He murmured, "I have not seen Xiener for many years. The last time I saw Xiener was 30 years ago. No, it was 40 years ago. That's not it either. How many years was it? I have forgotten." The Duke of Xinyu knocked on his head, saying, "I am really old." Su Yu's heart ached as he said, "Xiener didn't come, but our child will come to see you soon." Hearing this, the Duke of Xinyu was pleasantly surprised. "You have a child? What is it called? A boy or a girl? How old is it?" He was like a young man who had found a treasure, his eyes shining brightly. Su Yu pressed down on the Duke of Xinyu's trembling hands. "Later, I will let her come to see you personally. If there is anything, you can ask her in person." Okay. As a grandfather, I have to prepare some gifts." The Duke of Xinyu trembled as he tried to stand up, but he fell back onto the wrought tan chair. "Forget it. Let the servants come get it later." The Duke of Xinyu extended his hand. Help me to light a stick of incense." "Light a stick of incense? To whom?" Su Yu helped the Duke of Xinyu up, and under his guidance, they came to a corner of the backyard. It was a locust forest. In the forest, an ancient and vicissitude tomb lay there quietly. On the gravestone, a name was carved, Xiao Linxian. Chapter 2994. Su Yu's eyes were filled with sorrow. It was the grave of Xia Jingyu's father. Many years ago, her father had passed away and was reduced to dust. Life is short. Life is fragile. Nothing more. If Xia Jingyu knew, she would be equally sad. "Old friend, I've come to see you again." The Duke of Xinyu raised a cup of wine and poured it in front of the grave. He waved his hand. "Come and give Uncle Xia a toast." Su Yu felt a tinge of sorrow. He poured a cup of wine in front of the grave and said, "Uncle Xia, please protect Jingyu in heaven." He bowed deeply to show his respect to Xiao Linxian. But when he looked down, he suddenly noticed that there was a special grass growing in front of the grave. The rest of the grass had withered and turned yellow. Only this grass was green and lush, as if it had grown in spring. He looked at it carefully, his eyes narrowing. He could feel the chaotic energy of a descendant of the holy mountain emperor in the grass. Why would there be chaotic energy here? A pale color appeared in Su Yu's eyes as his soul, transparent eyes appeared. In the end, Su Yu could not help but be shocked when he saw it. In Xiao Linshuan's grave, there were not human remains, but a stone man. What's wrong?" The Duke of Xinyu sensed that Su Yu's expression was strange. Su Yu hid his shock and suppressed the waves of emotions in his heart. "Nothing. Father-in-law, may I ask when he left?" The Duke of Xinyu's eyes were filled with sorrow. He counted with his fingers. "It has been decades. Decades ago, Xia Jingyu had already left the 8-star civilization and arrived at the 9-star civilization. Did my father personally bury him?" Su Yu asked again. The Duke of Xinyu nodded his old head. Yes, the descendants of the Xia family were declining, and he was the only one left in this world. No one was there to bury him, so I had to personally take care of his funeral. Su Yu's heart was in turmoil as he listened. Why was Xia Jingyu's father a descendant of the Holy Mountain Emperor? Even if Xia Jingyu was Mirror Flower Emperor's vessel, there was no need to arrange for a descendant of the Holy Mountain Emperor to remain in this world. Right? The Duke of Xinyu suddenly thought of something and said, "You are whispering to me. I am old and muddled to have forgotten one thing." Trembling, he took out a small box from his sleeve and said, "This is what your Uncle Xia asked me to give you before he died. It's a pity that you didn't come, and it's been delayed until now." Something left behind before he died? Su Yu was suspicious. How could Xia Linxian confirm that Su Yu was still alive decades ago? "Open it and take a look," the Duke of Xinyu said. Su Yu received the box and opened it. He discovered that it contained a letter made of leather. The Duke of Xinyu said, "I do not understand why my old friend left you an empty piece of vellum. But before he died, he repeatedly told me to hand it to you." Su Yu looked at the vellum. With the Duke of Xinyu's mortal body, the vellum was indeed empty. However, Su Yu was different. He had the body of a sacred mountain son of heaven, and his body was filled with the power of primal chaos. Hence, he could tell at a glance that the vellum was filled with a strong chaotic energy. He gathered a shred of chaotic energy on his fingertip and gently touched the vellum. The chaotic energy on the vellum immediately condensed into words that normal people could not see. Meditation scripture? So you could not help but be surprised. What is this? He read it in detail, but did not feel that the meditation scripture was anything special. On the surface, it seemed to be a very ordinary scripture. Moreover, it was very awkward to read, as if it was lacking something. Is this what Xia Linxian wanted to give me before he died? So he was suspicious. Xia Linxian did not hesitate to condense the chaotic energy into a will before he died, but there were no other words, only vague scriptures. How strange. Did you see anything? The Duke of Xinyu asked. Su Yu muttered to himself. Did Uncle Xia say anything else before he died? The Duke of Xinyu thought for a long time. He said to take good care of Jingyu. I will leave her to you. These were very ordinary words, nothing special. Su Yu's heart was filled with disappointment and shame. He was disappointed that Xia Linxian did not leave any clues behind. He was ashamed that he did not take good care of Xia Jingyu. I understand, Su Yu sighed. I will do my best to take care of Jingyu. He did not dare to speak of Xia Jingyu's current situation, as he was afraid that the Duke of Xinyu, who did not have much time left to live, would be worried and die. The Duke of Xinyu smiled. I believe that my old friend would be very happy to know that you have taken care of Jingyu all these years. Huh? Where did this come from? Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. Father-in-law, have you seen Jingyu? The Duke of Xinyu's old face revealed a kind smile. All these years, Jingyu has been coming often to keep me company. Sometimes I almost see her as senior as my daughter. Su Yu's heart shook. Xia Jingyu had not been by his side for 100 years. How could she have had the chance to see the Duke of Xinyu? Could there be some misunderstanding? Suddenly, the figure of a person appeared in Su Yu's mind, and he asked in disbelief, Father-in-law, the Jingyu you speak of, is she dressed in black and very cold? The only person around him that the Duke of Xinyu would mistake for Xia Jingyu was the sinful daughter. The Duke of Xinyu was stunned. It is true that she is dressed in black, but she is not cold. When she is by my side, she often smiles. But she does not talk much. After a pause, the Duke of Xinyu said, Why? Is she not Xia Jingyu? I thought it was just that she didn't like to talk much. So you cannot hide it, and could only say she is someone else very similar to Xia Jingyu. He was very suspicious. Why would the sinful daughter pretend to be Xia Jingyu to keep his father-in-law company? Moreover, from the Duke of Xinyu's description, it was not the first time that the sinful daughter had been meeting her father-in-law behind his back for many years. What was the sinful daughter trying to do? Why had she hidden it from him all these years? If he had not come here on a whim, he would still be in the dark. Thinking back to the fact that he had given the sinful daughter the primordial energy that he had painstakingly obtained, but she did not cherish it and did not know how to use it, Su Yu became even more suspicious. It looked like he needed to communicate with the sinful daughter. What was her motive for following Su Yu all these years? There is such a similar person in this world. The Duke of Xinyu was shocked, but she did not deny that she was Jing Yu. Su Yu's eyes darkened. What was the sinful daughter's motive for pretending to be Xia Jingyu? Moreover, she fused a ball in my body to help me improve my constitution. The Duke of Xinyu was confused. At that time, I thought I was going to die, but the ball allowed me to live for another year or two until now. Huh? Su Yu frowned. A ball? The Duke of Xinyu said, "It looks like a water droplet, and it is filled with very pure energy." Hearing this, Su Yu's pupils shrank. Chapter 2995. She said, "You sent someone to give it to me." The Duke of Xinyu's eyes were filled with surprise. If she is not Xia Jingyu, then who is she? If it was not Xia Jingyu, why would she care for him so much? Whenever Su Yu was not by her side, she often came to accompany him. However, Su Yu was already in great shock. He stared blankly at the empty sky, his mind buzzing. The sinful lady did not waste the primordial energy. Instead, she had left it to the dying Duke of Xinyu. She obviously had no relationship with the Duke of Xinyu, but she did not hesitate to give the primordial energy to raise her cultivation to the Duke of Xinyu in Su Yu's name. The sinful lady had been pursuing the peak of the martial path all her life. She longed for a breakthrough more than anyone else. But when the opportunity to break through was right in front of her, the sinful lady gave it up and gave it to the Duke of Xinyu, whom she did not even know. Was there a need to say who she did this for? Sinful lady. Su Yu felt a pain in his heart. Just a moment ago, he was still blaming the sinful lady, but she silently endured it, neither explaining nor defending herself. The Duke of Xinyu saw this and seemed to understand something. He patted Su Yu's shoulder and said, "Do not leave behind any regrets." Only he knew that Su Yu and Xia Jingyu could have been married, but by a freak combination of factors, Su Yu had become the Duke of Xinyu's son-in-law. Father-in-law. Su Yu was ashamed, his heart aching. "Go." The Duke of Xinyu smiled kindly. Su Yu cupped his fists. "I will visit you later." He had mixed feelings. With a leap, he disappeared from Shunyue Island and returned to the Great Hall. He looked around, but there was no trace of the sinful lady. He could not even see her in the entire territory. Where is the sinful lady? Su Yu's heart was inexplicably flustered. It felt like he was about to lose Siener. Reporting to the Cauldron Master, "The sinful lady has gone out to exchange money," a subordinate replied. The Cauldron Master came from an 8-star civilization. The 8-star civilization's currency was, of course, not suitable for the 9-star civilization. Although he had killed many members of the Skull Group in the galaxy and seized a lot of the 9-star civilization's currency, it was still a drop in the bucket compared to the vast population of the 9-star civilization. He could only exchange for the currency that everyone needed. Su Yu felt much better, but he was still worried. Where did he go? Sinful Girl said that she had looked up information. There is a sacred place in Sangtian Mountain where all forces can trade. It is called Sky Capital Square. It should be there now. Tianyu Square? For some unknown reason, Su Yu had never been so worried about the sinful girl. Or rather, he was in a rush to apologize for her. With a flash of his figure, Su Yu left the territory hurriedly and headed toward the Tiandu workshop. In a certain pavilion in the territory, Xinge was playing chess with Bai Shui. Xinge looked at the sky and blinked. Master is as busy as ever. Who knows which woman he's looking for this time? Bai Shui continued playing. Xinge covered her mouth and chuckled. There was a hint of weariness in her smile. "You have a deep misunderstanding of Master. He's not as fickle as you think." Bai Shui felt that she had a say in this. She laughed and said, "You think someone who has stripped me naked is a gentleman?" Xinge shrugged. "He's not a gentleman, but he would definitely not touch other women." As she spoke, Xinge looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. "I'm guessing that you must have been seen by him before, but not touched. That's why you're not satisfied. That's why you're prejudiced against Master, right?" Bai Shui forcefully tapped the chess piece on the chessboard. "What nonsense are you spouting? Why would I fall for this liar?" Xinge's smile faded, replaced with a serious expression. It's best that you don't fall for him. Otherwise, you'll suffer for the rest of your life. Because you won't get him. Only those who had been with Su Yu for a long time would understand that he only had those two in his heart. At the same time, Tiandu workshop. In an extremely stylish shop, the sinful girl was wearing a conical bamboo hat and was discussing with someone in a material shop. This shop was the largest material shop on Santian Mountain. The Guangtian Pavilion accepted all kinds of rare materials. The second shopkeeper of the shop was holding the space ring of the sinful girl, examining the items inside. After looking for a moment, he shook his head expressionlessly. Send more precious items to the Guangtian Pavilion next time. In other words, the things that the sinful girl brought were too cheap and not worth the Guangtian Pavilion accepting. The sinful girl had spent her entire life cultivating and had never asked about the trade of resources. Thus, she was not good at conversing with others. But now that she was in charge of the cauldron, even if she was not good at it, she had to bite the bullet. What about these? The sinful girl took out another space storage device and passed it to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper swept through it and was surprised. Some of the items in the space storage device were extremely precious, but there were also low-quality items. They were all jumbled together, and it was obvious that the owner of the space storage device was not good at organizing. His eyes glowed. How about this? I'll be kind and buy it for 100 million soul stones. The so-called soul stones were the common currency issued by the Holy Mountain. Regardless if it was a 9-star civilization or an abandoned civilization, they could all use the soul stones to trade and buy what they wanted. 100 million soul stones was not a small number. But the space storage device in the hands of the sinful girl contained the most important core resources of the skull unit. How could its value be just 100 million soul stones? The shopkeeper clearly saw that the sinful girl was too inexperienced, and thus intentionally swindled her. He wanted to see if he could obtain the core resources at a low price. Can it be more? The sinful girl asked. She did not know that the moment she opened her mouth, she revealed her nature of not being good at conversing. The shopkeeper's face was taut, and he had a look of disdain. I only reluctantly accepted it because of your sincerity. Since you think it's worth it, then take it back. As he spoke, he pushed the space storage device back. The sinful girl's face revealed a rare, apologetic expression. I'm sorry. Then, as you said, 100 million soul stones. Forget it, forget it. I'll be a good person again. The second shopkeeper said impatiently. The sinful girl thanked him profusely. Thank you, shopkeeper. Thank you. This was probably one of the few times in her life that she treated someone so courteously. The second shopkeeper extended his palm and was about to take the space storage device in his hand, but a palm appeared out of thin air and pressed down on the space storage device. We're not selling it. The owner of the palm was none other than Su Yu, who had rushed over in time. In fact, he had already been here for a while. He had witnessed the whole process of the sinful girl negotiating with someone, and his heart was filled with an indescribable emotion. The once sinful girl, how beautiful and peerless was she! She was as cold as an ice mountain, and her powerful abilities shook the galaxy. She had chased after him for several years. Even when the heavens and earth were torn apart, her expression did not change. She was like a goddess from the heavens, worthy of respect and fear. But what made her lower herself and bargain with others? She even forced a smile, apologized, and looked at others' faces? Chapter 2996. The sinful lady had changed because of him, hadn't she? The ruthless woman, who had always been a loner and devoted herself to pursuing the martial path, had lowered herself for him, changed herself for him, and made sacrifices for him silently. For a moment, Su Yu felt that it would have been better if the sinful lady hadn't met him. Why are you here? The sinful lady asked as she tilted her head to look at him. Su Yu hesitated for a moment, then put his other hand on her shoulder. The sinful lady's calm eyes trembled, and her body stiffened. For the first time, a blush appeared on her snow-white cheeks. She wanted to speak, but her mind was blank. Her heart was pounding as if something was pounding inside. It was a wonderful and strange feeling, one that she had never experienced in her life. Suyu whispered in her ear, "I want to see you." Upon hearing that, the sinful lady's pupils shrank. Her heart felt as if it was being held by a strong hand, making it difficult for her to breathe. "You want to see me?" This was probably the most touching thing that the sinful lady had ever heard from Suyu. Although it was only 3 words, they shocked the sinful lady greatly. "Then, say sorry," Suyu said apologetically. The sinful lady, who was usually indifferent and concise, couldn't even speak fluently at the moment. It's okay." She looked into Suyu's eyes, only to find that he was looking at her as well. When their eyes met, they were both stunned. Suyu's feelings for her were the most complicated. From the beginning, they were mortal enemies. Later, they were on the same side. Then, they became friends, and finally, they became a hazy relationship. She couldn't help but sigh at how fate played tricks on people. "Are you selling or not?" The vice shopkeeper interrupted the tacit communication between the two with a sullen face. The sinful lady came back to her senses, looked away, and said, "Listen to him." The vice shopkeeper looked at Suyu, who said without hesitation, "No." As he spoke, Suyu put away the space storage device, put his arm around the sinful lady's shoulder, and said, "Let's go to another shop." The vice shopkeeper became anxious. Although it was just a quick glance, he still found several treasures that were worth hundreds of millions of soul stones. If he could get his hands on them, it would be a huge windfall. "Wait, the price is negotiable." The vice shopkeeper stood up and stopped her. The sinful lady looked back at him and asked, "Didn't you say that you would only accept me if I did something good? Now you're saying the price is negotiable?" The assistant manager coughed dryly. "I've reconsidered. I've realized that some of the items in the interspatial storage device are of some value, but not too high. I wonder if the two of you are sincere in selling?" asked the assistant manager. Suyu stopped in his tracks, weighed the space storage device in his hand, and said, "Do you have the sincerity to accept it?" The second shopkeeper proudly said with his hands behind his back, "Of course, my Guangtian pavilion pays particular attention to sincerity when doing business." Suyu extended a finger. "Since that's the case, I'll sell it to you at this price. 100 million soul stones?" The vice manager said hesitantly. Wasn't this still the same price as before? He realized that wasn't the case. "Don't tell me you're going to say 1 billion. If it was 1 billion, it would still be a great profit." Just a cursory glance just now, the total value of the few items inside was far more than 1 billion. "No, I meant 10 billion soul stones," Suyu said calmly. The Skull unit had plundered the resources of the Milky Way for many years. 10 billion was a small amount. Guangtian Pavilion still had money to earn. "What? 10 billion? Are you crazy?" The second shopkeeper laughed angrily. What kind of concept was 10 billion soul stones? The annual income of each of the 3 great saint families was only this amount. How was it possible to make a transaction of 10 billion at once? The black-robed man in front of him must be crazy about money, right? So he did not say a word. He took out one precious item after another from the space storage device and placed them on the table. Taiha ichthyosaur, worth at least 100 million soul stones. Tian jade coral, worth 150 million soul stones. 7th grade doctrine artifact, black dragon gut sword, worth 200 million soul stones. So you took out the relatively precious items from the space storage device one by one. There were dozens of them. These add up to a value of 10 billion. So you looked at the pile of items on the table and shook the space storage device in his hand. In addition, there are some precious items that haven't been counted yet. Now tell me again, who is the crazy one who wants to buy these items with 100 million soul stones? Suyu asked rhetorically. The second shopkeeper said sheepishly, "It's my fault. I didn't realize there were so many valuable items." The sinful lady looked at him and sighed silently. She really wasn't suited to haggling with small fry. Something worth 10 billion had almost been cheated out of it by someone for 100 million soul stones. It was ridiculous. "So, are you going to take it or not?" Suyu asked. The second shopkeeper said hurriedly, "Please wait a moment. Our head shopkeeper has to make the decision." He hurriedly ran to the back hall. In the courtyard, an old man with a goatee, was leisurely feeding the goldfish in the water tank. "Head shopkeeper, I have a big deal for you to decide." The old man with a goatee looked at the fish tank and asked, "How big is it?" 10 billion, the second shopkeeper said. The old man with the goatee paused, obviously surprised. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "Give up. Recently, we need to invest a large sum of money in another matter." "Give up?" The second shopkeeper felt extremely pained. "Head shopkeeper, this deal is definitely profitable. We have already counted 10 billion worth of items." He listed the dozens of treasures that Suyu had taken out just now one by one. At first, the old man with the goatee was not moved and had no intention of making a deal. But gradually, the old man with the goatee's gaze sharpened. He patiently listened to the second shopkeeper's narration without missing a word. Where did this person come from? The old man with the goatee narrowed his eyes. The second shopkeeper shook his head. "I don't know. There were two people, but both wore black robes and masks. I couldn't determine their identities." He looked at the old man with a goatee in surprise. Initially, he had thought the deal was off based on his attitude. To think that the head shopkeeper had changed his mind, it was really unexpected. After muttering to himself for a long time, the old man with a goatee put down the fish food and walked to the front hall with his hands clasped behind his back. As soon as he arrived, he immediately hid the gloomy expression on his face and squeezed out a warm smile. He cupped his fists and said, "I'm the head shopkeeper of the Guangtian Pavilion. Two esteemed guests, please forgive me for not welcoming you earlier." Suyu nodded his head in response. The head shopkeeper said with a smile, "Servants, serve tea to the two esteemed guests." He then asked, "May I know where the two esteemed guests are from?" Suyu's eyes flickered. He said indifferently, "We are only here to sell things. We have no time for idle chatter. If you think this deal is inappropriate, we can find another seller." It was too naive to want to know his background. "We are willing, but compared to the goods, we would rather be friends with you," the head shopkeeper said with a smile. Suyu did not say a word. He put away the space storage device and said, "Let's go." The sinful lady was puzzled. Was he not going to sell? Or was this his way of bargaining? "Please wait. The Guangtian Pavilion is willing to make this deal with you," the head shopkeeper said hurriedly. "The price will be as you said just now, 10 billion soul stones." However, Suyu did not even turn his head. He said decisively, "I'm sorry, I'm not selling." The head shopkeeper said immediately, "The price can be higher." Suyu said indifferently, "I said, I'm not selling." He left the Guangtian Pavilion after saying that. Outside the shop, the sinful lady said, "We can sell it for a higher price." "Why wouldn't we sell it?" Suyu's eyes shone brightly. He said in a deep voice, "Don't you think this head shopkeeper is far more interested in us than these resources?" Chapter 2997. "Oh." The sinful lady thought about it carefully and said, "That seems to be the case. They have been trying to guess our origins." Suyu looked back at the board of the Guangtian Pavilion, then looked down at the space storage device in his hand. Maybe these stolen goods have something to do with them. When he had killed the skeleton group Sky Tion demon, he had revealed his identity as a great saint family from a 9-star civilization before he died. The space storage device must have had something unique to that family, which was why he had been recognized. However, Suyu had no regrets now that things had come to this. He and the sinful lady went to another shop and easily sold the goods for 10 billion soul stones. "You will keep all of this money." Suyu gave her all the soul stones he had obtained. The sinful lady was startled. "Aren't you afraid that I will take it all away?" 10 billion soul stones was not a small amount. Suyu was too confident in her. "Based on your care for the Duke of Xinyu, you can take 100 billion soul stones if you want." Suyu looked into her eyes. The sinful lady's cold eyes were suddenly filled with panic. Suyu's unexpected words had pierced her heart. For no reason, she had taken care of Suyu's father-in-law. Was there a need to explain why? Suyu took out another jade bottle, which contained 10 drops of primordial energy. "Come with me." He took a step forward and brought the sinful lady back to the secret room in his territory. "Consume it." This time, Suyu personally supervised the sinful lady's usage. She had no choice but to consume it on the spot. Suyu followed behind her, helping her quickly dissolve the medicinal effects. Meanwhile, in the Guangtian pavilion, the shopkeeper was still standing at the door, his expression constantly changing. "Did you buy it?" he asked coldly when the second shopkeeper returned. The second shopkeeper held a jade box in his hand and brought it to him. "I bought it from the Howard Tower for 3 billion. The shopkeeper opened the jade box. There was a white crystal inside, with a golden liquid flowing within. "It really is the heavenly flowing cloud crystal," the shopkeeper murmured. This was one of the items in Su Yu's space storage device. He had sold it to the Howard Tower for 300 million. Obviously, they wanted to buy it back, so the Howard Tower naturally asked for a price of 3 billion. The second shopkeeper felt his heartache. He had spent billions of soul stones for no good reason. This was a huge loss. However, the head shopkeeper specifically said that he wanted to buy this item back, and said that he would not hesitate to pay any price, so he could only allow the Howard building to state a price. "Head shopkeeper, what should we do if the higher-ups find out that we're spending money so recklessly?" asked the assistant shopkeeper worriedly. The head shopkeeper's expression was cold as he said, "If the higher-ups know that the heavenly flowing cloud crystal is here and we turn a blind eye to it, that would be truly troublesome." He packed up the Skyflow cloud crystals and put on his bamboo hat. "Take care of the shop. I'm going to the Covering Sky St. Clan to meet the master." Hearing this, the second shopkeeper's expression was abnormally solemn. The overwhelming Sky Holy Clan was a super holy clan, unlike the ordinary holy clans of Songtian Mountain. In such a sacred clan, it was possible that several super great sages with absolute strength would appear at any time. Although they were inferior to the famed Sword Sacred clan, they were definitely not weak. At that time, the news that the Huang family's territory had been occupied by a foreign force spread like wildfire. In just a few days, it had spread all over Songtian Mountain. Many factions on the mountain were startled. This was especially true for the Sacred Nether Clan and the Sacred Puppet Clan. The Sacred Nether Clan, an ancestral patriarch of the Great Sage Clan, was secretly investigating with nearly 20 ancient sages of the clan. How's the investigation of the foreign force occupying the Huang family's territory going? In the middle of the group was a child dressed in a simple gray robe. His face was very young, but his eyes were incomparably weathered. He was the ancestral patriarch of the Sacred Nether Clan, the Great Sage of the Nether Clan. He was quite skilled in controlling ghosts and corpses. "The intruders are from a small, unranked force called the Ding. I've never heard of them before," an ancient sage in charge of the investigation said. "As far as I know, the strongest one is their leader. His strength is only at the first stage of the mid-stage of the Heavenly Law Lord. He hasn't even reached the ancient sage level. Is he that weak?" The other dozen ancient sages discussed among themselves. The Huang family's territory is located in the center of Songtian Mountain. We've always given in to them for the sake of their surname. Now that all of their family members have disappeared, how can their territory fall into the hands of outsiders? Ancestral Patriarch, it's time to take back the Huang family's territory. The ancient sages suggested, but the ancestral patriarch of the Nether Clan remained silent. After a long time, he asked, "What about the Greenwood Sacred Clan and the Puppet Sacred Clan?" The ancient sage in charge of the investigation pondered for a moment and said, "This. The two sacred clans haven't done anything yet. They probably haven't made a move yet." The ancient sages suggested again, "Ancestral Patriarch, we must seize the territory before the two sacred clans realize what's going on." "That's right, Ancestral Patriarch. We can't miss this opportunity." However, the ancestral patriarch of the Nether Clan was exceptionally calm. His weathered eyes were filled with wisdom. "Why do I feel that this is a trap?" "A trap?" The ancient sages fell into deep thought. The ancient sage in charge of the investigation said, "Ancestral Patriarch, are you worried that the two sacred clans haven't made a move yet because they know something in advance?" The ancestral patriarch of the Nether Clan nodded slightly. "I dare not say for the Puppet Sacred Clan. They are obsessed with making puppets and aren't interested in expanding their territory. However, the Greenwood Sacred Clan has always been extremely interested in territory because they need to reproduce." The Greenwood Sacred Clan has paid a huge price for the Huang clan's territory. Now that the territory is no longer dangerous, how can they not do anything about it when a bunch of small forces have taken advantage of it? The ancient sage in charge of the investigation said, "Could it be that the Greenwood Sacred Clan hasn't received the news yet?" The ancestral patriarch of the Nether Clan laughed. "How is that possible? The Greenwood Sacred Clan is proficient in wood element ancestral techniques. Everything can be turned into their wood and become their eyes and ears. How could they not know about it? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the Greenwood Sacred Clan knows that we are secretly spying here." As he spoke, the ancestral patriarch of the Nether Clan's gaze suddenly sharpened. He stared at an ancient sage who was concentrating on the meeting. He clenched his fist and twisted the ancient sage's neck. Then, he took out a jade box from the ancient sage's chest. There was a seed that had already sprouted. The tender bud that had sprouted from the seed was abnormally green. Moreover, it was shining brightly. The ancient sage was shocked. He said, "Ah, this is a seed that has been dead for 100 years. When did it germinate?" The ancestral patriarch of the Nether Clan grabbed the seed and sneered. "Greenwood Sacred Clan, don't go too far." He clenched his fist, and the seed shattered with a bang. Green smoke came out of it. It was obvious that the Greenwood Sacred Clan had activated the seed and used it to spy on everything that was happening in the secret room. The ancestral patriarch of the Nether Clan sat back down and said calmly, "So, you saw it? The Greenwood Sacred Clan didn't do anything. It must be the Huang clan's territory. No, it must be that small force called the Cauldron. There's a big problem." Now, no one had any doubts. Then, how should we deal with that small force? The crowd asked. The ancestral patriarch of the Nether Clan rubbed his forehead. His eyes flickered. "Send an invitation. I want to meet their leader personally." However, just as he finished speaking, a spatial fluctuation suddenly appeared above their heads. Then, a red invitation floated down. Chapter 2998. Only the Space Saint Clan could master such a level of space domain. The space domain disappeared quickly, leaving only an invitation floating in front of the Netherworld ancestor. He picked it up and read it. His expression changed several times, and he finally fell silent. "Ancestor, is there a problem with the letter?" someone asked with concern. The Netherworld ancestor shook his head. "There's no problem with the letter, but the person who sent it." With a flick of his finger, the words in the letter flew into the air and appeared in everyone's eyes. After reading it, they were shocked and confused. The Cauldron invited the 3 great saint families and all the ancient clans of the Songtian Mountain for a discussion. The people were amused and annoyed at the same time. The funny thing was that the new Cauldron thought too highly of itself. How dare it summon all the forces of the Songtian Mountain for a discussion? The 3 great saint clans have been rooted in the Songtian Mountain for many years. However, they were not qualified to summon all the forces of the Songtian Mountain. How could this Cauldron invite them? "Ancestor, although this Cauldron is a little strange, we can't let it be so arrogant," a person suggested. "We still need to show our dignity." The people of the clan were not interested in this invitation. Only the Netherworld ancestor, who pondered for a long time, made a decision that caused an uproar. "Prepare a generous gift, and we will attend the meeting on time." What? The dignified Saint Clan was going to bow to a small force and participate in their discussion? Was this a joke? If they attended this meeting, how could the Netherworld Saint Clan raise their heads in the Songtian Mountain in the future? "I have made up my mind," the Netherworld ancestor said in a low voice. As the only great saint of the Saint Clan, he had to be more cautious than anyone else, in addition to having extraordinary vision. That Cauldron should not be underestimated. The Greenwood Saint Clan had also received a similar invitation. Having seen Su Yu's real strength, they certainly did not dare to refuse to attend a meeting. In the secret forging room of the Puppet Saint Clan, a strong man in a black robe, whose body and mind were hidden, was refining a 10 feet tall humanoid metal puppet with the help of 10 ancient saints. The material of the puppet was neither gold nor wood. It was unknown what it was made of. Black thunder and lightning were flowing all over its body, somewhat similar to the humanoid, disastrous fire of the Saint Clan. However, compared to the disastrous fire, it was much weaker. The puppet sage stroked the metal puppet with a look of regret. The puppet is complete. Only the heart remains. It can't be refined. Bolts of lightning jumped out of the puppet and landed on the puppet great saint's arm, but they didn't cause any damage. The human heart puppet in front of him was the masterpiece of 10 generations of the puppet saint clan. It used meteorites from outer space, gathered the bones of various great sages, as well as several premium materials from the 9-star civilizations, and spent several epochs to refine it. In his generation, the outer appearance of the puppet had already been completely formed, but it was only the outer appearance. It still lacked a strong heart. Only the heart could be like a human, able to cultivate and absorb energy on its own. It was not an inanimate object. At this moment, a spatial domain appeared above them, and an invitation fell from it. The sacred puppet didn't even raise its head. It reached out and grasped the invitation in its palm. He didn't open it. He only blocked the cover of the invitation and saw the contents clearly. Ding! Invite all the forces of Sangtian Mountain to participate in the discussion. The ancient sages in the room chuckled softly. Who is Ding? We don't have such a force in Sangtian Mountain, do we? I heard that it seems to be a small force that occupied the territory of the Huang family. We didn't bother to find trouble with them, but they took the initiative to come to us. The puppet great saint took a look at the invitation and crushed it expressionlessly. He said indifferently, "Don't worry about it. Continue with the refinement." Almost all the forces in Sangtian Mountain received the same invitation. Most of them snorted and refused to participate. Only a few of them said they would participate. In the territory, Sui was guarding the sinful lady. She had refined all the medicinal power and lived up to everyone's expectations. She broke through to the middle stage of the heavenly law master in one go, and her cultivation was now comparable to Suyu's. At this moment, Suyu sent out the last invitation with the spatial domain. The sinful lady opened her beautiful eyes and said, "I'm about to recover to the peak of my strength." Half of her body was destroyed after all, and it hadn't recovered to its original state. "I have a feeling that if I recover to the peak, my body will undergo a qualitative change," the sinful lady said. As the son of heaven's vessel, she had borne the body of Mirror Flower Heaven for too long, and her body had been subtly influenced. If her cultivation was restored to its original state, some of Mirror Flower Heaven's power that had settled in her body would be stimulated, and she would become extremely powerful. Suyu looked at her deeply and said, "If such a day comes, remember to remind me to guard you at all times." To be honest, he didn't think it was a good thing. He had only transplanted one of Mirror Flower Heaven's hearts, and she had almost taken over his body. As Mirror Flower Heaven's former vessel, if her body was going to undergo some qualitative change, he really had to guard against Mirror Flower Heaven's petty tricks. "Okay." The sinful lady nodded, and her eyes were fixed on the floating invitation. "Why did you send invitations to all the forces in Sangtian Mountain?" Suyu's eyes shone with a profound light as he said, "I have to get my body back sooner or later, and I can't delay it any longer. So, I have to stabilize the situation in Sangtian Mountain as soon as possible, and ensure that after I leave, the Cauldron won't be harassed by the forces in Sangtian Mountain. So, you want to kill the chicken to scare the monkeys?" The sinful lady immediately understood Suyu's intention. Unexpectedly, Suyu shook his head and said, "No. Killing people to establish power is only a temporary effect. Common interests are the long-term solution," Suyu said calmly. The sinful lady looked at him and sighed with emotion. 100 years ago, when she first met Suyu in the seal, he was still a young and hot-blooded youth. Now he had grown into a mature, steady, and sophisticated person. The passage of time had washed away the dust of the world, but it had also resisted the edges of human nature. Since I invited them for a discussion, I naturally want to discuss long-term interests. Only then can the Cauldron grow steadily, Suyu said. The sinful lady chose to stand beside him and said, "I really want to help you." Her words were filled with deep helplessness and powerlessness. 100 years had passed, and she could no longer catch up with Suyu's pace. At the moment, even though her cultivation had improved, she couldn't help Suyu much. Suyu patted the back of her hand and smiled warmly. Living well in this world is the best help you can give me. He didn't want to see anyone else sacrifice themselves because of him. His life was too heavy, so heavy that it couldn't bear any more. Okay. The sinful lady looked at him and smiled, her heart warm. Then, Suyu and Bai Shui chatted in detail. Hey, when can the sculpture seal be made? Those old guys of the Heavenly Law Alliance are waiting for my answer. Bai Shui rested her chin on her hands and said bitterly. She had followed Suyu and the others to Sangtian Mountain to wait for Mo Hung to make a new sculpture seal. Suyu said, I have already sent an invitation to the Puppet Saint clan in charge of the fire reservoir. If they are willing to come, we can discuss in person and borrow their fire reservoir. If Mo Hung wanted to make a seal, he could only make use of the natural fire reservoir on Sangtian Mountain. And that fire reservoir happened to be occupied by the Puppet Saint clan. A trace of worry flashed in Bai Shui's eyes. The Puppet Saint clan is not easy to deal with. Yesterday, I contacted the clan master of the Puppet Saint clan. He used to be a member of the Heavenly Law Alliance. In the end, he couldn't help me get the trial qualification for the fire reservoir because the Puppet Saint and the Ancient Saints are determined not to let outsiders enter their fire reservoirs. So he raised his eyebrows slightly. Even the clan master couldn't persuade those old guys. Even if the Puppet Saint clan was willing to participate in the discussion, it would be impossible to persuade them. Let's hold the discussion first. If it doesn't work, we could just barge in. So you made up his mind. Chapter 2999. Forcing his way through was a last resort, and Suyu didn't want to do it unless it was absolutely necessary. That's more like it. Bai Shui's worry turned into joy as she held her chin and giggled. She was well aware of Suyu's strength. As long as he was serious, he could even flatten the Puppet Saint clan. Then, can I use the Yin-Yang Gate? Suyu asked. Ever since he had met the Duke of Xinyu once, his heart had been moved, and he wanted to find Xia Jingyu and reunite with her. As for recovering his body, that was the most urgent matter. No, Bai Shui shook her head regretfully. Just as I said before, the Yin-Yang Gate is the secret of the Heavenly Law Alliance. Only those who bring great benefits to the Heavenly Law Alliance can request to use it. The most direct method to obtain great benefits is to complete some of the missions issued by the Heavenly Law Union. The minimum requirement for accepting these missions is that one must be from an aristocratic family. Now, your Cauldron can be considered an aristocratic family and is qualified to accept some missions from the Heavenly Law Union. Suyu sat down and asked, what mission do you think is most likely to get the Heavenly Law Alliance's old alliance masters to use the Yin-Yang Gate as a reward? Let me see. White Snow took out a thick stack of books. Here are all the possible missions for the next 3 years. Bai Shui took out a golden tome and flipped it open. The top missions are all in there. Suyu took it and looked at it. He could not help but be surprised. Great Sage level ominous beast killed. Iron-eating giant bear. Searching for the extinct spirit herb, the Tao Rain immortal root. Suyu casually flipped through it and grinned. Your Heavenly Law Alliance is really ambitious. All of the missions in this golden booklet are extremely difficult missions that can only be completed by a great saint family. Are you sure that a great saint family will help you complete them? The price required to invite a great sage family wasn't something the Heavenly Tao Alliance could afford. Bai Shui said nonchalantly, what's so strange about that? My Heavenly Law Alliance might be an aristocratic family in name, but do you think that our true foundation is inferior to an aristocratic family? This really wasn't it. Suyu did not know how strong the old alliance masters were, but Bai Shui was already a great saint. In theory, a force with a great saint expert was enough to be classified as a sacred clan, but the Heavenly Law Alliance did not. Furthermore, the Heavenly Law Alliance's influence was so widespread that it could infiltrate every 9-star civilization or even 8-star civilization. In terms of influence, how could the Heavenly Law Alliance be inferior to the 3 sacred clans on the Hidden Heaven Mountain? How powerful is your Heavenly Law Alliance? This was the first time that Suyu was concerned about such a matter. Bai Shui proudly crossed her arms in front of her chest. In terms of combat power, I'm not any weaker than some of the Super Saint clans. So you was a little surprised. None of the Super Saint clans were simple. For example, the famed Sword Sacred clan. Their foundation was terrifyingly deep. He never expected the Heavenly Tao Union to be so powerful. However, it was no wonder that his branches could be spread all over the place without being attacked by the local holy race. Does this mean that trying to barge into the Heavenly Law Alliance by force isn't realistic? Suyu quashed such an idea. Bai Shui glared at him. Good thing you didn't, or you wouldn't even know how you died. Suyu asked curiously, since the Heavenly Law Alliance has such power, why didn't it become a holy clan? Bai Shui kept her mouth shut and pointed at the ceiling. Suyu understood. It must have something to do with the Saint Mountain Emperor. Once they became a holy clan, they would be monitored by the Saint Mountain Emperor. The Heavenly Law Alliance must have some secret they didn't want the Saint Mountain Emperor to find out, which was why they hadn't been promoted yet. So, many holy clans are willing to complete the missions on the Golden Book in exchange for what they want from the Heavenly Law Alliance. Bai Shui raised her eyebrows, as if she had finally raised her head in front of Suyu. Suyu said, "Give me a suggestion. Which mission on the Golden Book would allow you to use the Yin-Yang Gate?" Bai Shui shook her head mysteriously. Not a single one. The Yin-Yang Gate would not be handed over to outsiders easily. Not one, Suyu said impatiently. Then why did you bring the Golden Book out? Wasn't that a waste of time? Bai Shui took back the Golden Book. I just wanted to tell you not to waste your time. If you want to use the Yin-Yang Gate, you would need to complete something even more difficult than the mission on the Golden Book. Even someone as powerful as you wouldn't be able to complete it. She was trying to dissuade Suyu from wasting his time on the Yin-Yang Gate. Suyu said stubbornly, "Where there's a will, there's nothing impossible in this world." In his 200 years of cultivation, Suyu had always held the belief that he would not give up until the very last moment. Bai Shui looked deeply into Suyu's eyes. After a moment, she sighed helplessly. "All right, since you don't want to give up, I will use my authority as the Heavenly Law Alliance Master to make an exception and give you a chance to participate in the mission." Without waiting for Suyu to agree, Bai Shui said, "Don't make a decision yet. Let me finish. This mission has already invited all the big and small forces of the 10 Heaven's 100 Caves to send representatives to carry out the mission. There are many holy clans among them, and even a super holy clan has agreed to accept the mission." Suyu frowned. The more involved the mission, the more difficult it would be. If even a super holy clan was involved, this mission would be extraordinarily difficult. "The mission is to head to the Heavenly Law Prison and repair it," Bai Shui said. Heavenly Law Prison? Suyu had read many books about the 9-star civilizations, but this was the first time he had heard of the Heavenly Law Prison. How ignorant. You haven't even heard of the Heavenly Law Prison. Bai Shui blinked, covering her mouth as she laughed. The Heavenly Law Prison is one of the 3 ancient prisons set up by the Holy Mountain Son of Heaven in the 9-star civilizations. Extremely ancient, heinous criminals are imprisoned inside. Every prisoner possesses the primeval divine power to destroy the 9-star civilization. For example, there are 7 heroes who accompanied the human ancestor to fight against the Holy Mountain in the last era. Their cultivation levels have reached the level of all saints. Suyu's pupils constricted. Comrades of the human ancestor? Those 7 almighty beings are said to be the former disciples of a human ancestor. Each of them is a strong man of the ancestor level. They are extremely terrifying. The Heavenly Law Prison has a seal from the Holy Mountain, which seals them all year round. However, the prison has experienced the baptism of time, and a considerable degree of decay has appeared. This requires a considerable number of strong men to repair the Heavenly Law Prison. The Holy Mountain has entrusted this mission to the Heavenly Law Alliance. The Heavenly Law Alliance cannot complete alone and can only invite the strong men of the world with generous gifts. After a pause, Bai Shui said thoughtfully, "I don't know why, but the current speed of repair is quite slow. It is very likely that it will be overdue. When that time comes, the Heavenly Law Alliance may be punished by the Holy Mountain. If you can turn the tide and complete the repair ahead of time, You will be the savior of the Heavenly Law Alliance. It should not be a problem to borrow the Yin Yang Gate again. So you did not hesitate. Give me a copy of this mission. For the Yin Yang Gate, any risk was worth taking. Moreover, he really wanted to meet the 7 disciples of the human ancestor. Chapter 3000. All he wanted was to know if his disciples were still alive. Okay, I'll find a way to forge a new seal for you, Suyu promised. He couldn't wait to carry out the task of repairing the Heavenly Law prison. In the following time, Suyu concentrated on his training. The primeval energy was only effective the first time it was used. No matter how it was used, it wouldn't work. Therefore, he could only rely on the local pure Heavenly Law energy to improve his cultivation bit by bit. Under normal circumstances, it would take him no less than 100,000 years to advance to the second stage of the middle stage of the Heavenly Law Master. Time passed little by little. 1 month later, Suyu opened his eyes slowly. Although he had worked very hard in the past 10 days, the improvement in his cultivation was quite small. I have to find a way to improve my cultivation. Suyu didn't have enough time. He could encounter the Emperor of the Holy Mountain at any time and have a great battle. Therefore, improving his cultivation was an urgent matter. However, this was not the time to think about it. He had sent out the invitation today. He looked into the distant sky with a hint of shrewdness in his eyes. Don't let me down. Suyu took a step forward and used the secret space technique to come to the first hall. The first hall was extremely large. It looked like a living room from the outside, but it was actually a vast forest with green peaks. On one of the towering mountains, there was a pavilion. When Suyu arrived, there were already many people sitting in the pavilion. Suyu knew one of them. It was the Green Hat old ancestor of the Greenwood Holy Clan whom he had met not long ago. The other person was a mysterious man who emitted a gloomy aura. Judging from the seat opposite the Green Hat old ancestor, he should be the famous Netherworld old ancestor. As for the others, they took the initiative to greet Suyu with kind faces. They should be the great families attached to the 2 holy clans. They had come because they had been instructed by the 2 great saints. In addition, there was a group of indifferent people, about 100 of them. More than I expected. Suyu stepped forward with a smile. He had thought only the Green Hat old ancestor would come, but the Netherworld old ancestor and his faction had also come. Moreover, there were some other factions, which was unexpected. The Green Hat old ancestor smiled kindly. Cauldron Master, please tell me what you need. Old ancestor Netherworld saw this and was secretly surprised. As expected, old ancestor Green Hat was quite afraid of this cauldron. He was actually so humble. He just didn't know where this so-called Cauldron Venerable One came from. Was his identity extraordinary, or was his strength outstanding? Suyu sat down and waved his hand casually. A table appeared in front of each of them, and it was filled with all kinds of spiritual fruits. At first, the leaders of the various powers did not care, but upon closer inspection, they realized that those were actually quite valuable spirit fruits. Many of the leaders of the forces who were looking down on them couldn't help but retract their arrogance. It seemed that the cauldron was not as bad as the news said. I have gathered all of you here today because I want to discuss something with you. Suyu went straight to the point. The Green Hat old ancestor smiled and waited silently for Suyu to continue. However, some of the leaders of the forces who had come with ill intentions already snorted disdainfully. Discuss? Who do you think you are? The one who had just spoken was an ancient sage. Based on what he could sense, he should have already reached ancient sage pinnacle, just a step away from becoming a great sage. His face was full of red sideburns, and his eyes were burning with 2 balls of fire. There was also a strong, burning aura on his body. Old Ancestor Green Hat looked at him with dissatisfaction, but surprisingly didn't scold him. If other ancient saints had offended Suyu, he would have given them a warning. However, this red-bearded ancient saint was the ancestor of the most powerful family in the Sangtian Mountain, the Burning Flame family. This family's foundation was quite good, and it wouldn't be long before they became a sacred race. However, old Ancestor Green Hat didn't care about this. No matter how powerful the aristocratic families were, he didn't put them in his eyes. What he cared about was that the Burning Flame family was a vassal force of the sacred puppet race. Songtian Mountain's fire pond was managed by the Scorching Flame family. Later on, when the sacred puppet race descended onto Songtian Mountain, the Scorching Flame family gifted the fire pond to the sacred puppet race. If he reprimanded the Burning Flame family, it would be the same as going against the Sacred Puppet clan. As for the Sacred Puppet tribe, Green Hat really didn't want to provoke them. Suyu cast a sidelong glance at him and ignored him. He then said, "I once obtained a treasure by accident, and I would like to share it with all of you." Treasure? The Netherworld Old Ancestor was disappointed. He had thought that Suyu's discussion would be about something important, so it was to share the treasures. He wanted to leave. With his status and level, he had seen all kinds of treasures in the world. Apart from the divine objects from the Holy Mountain, he had obtained all kinds of treasures that the great saints of the 9-star civilizations could come into contact with. Suyu was just a middle-stage master of the heavenly law. What kind of treasures could he share? He felt that this trip was a waste of time. However, he suddenly glanced at Old Ancestor Green Hat and was surprised to find that Old Ancestor Green Hat didn't look impatient at all. Instead, his eyes were burning, and a hint of suppressed expectation flickered in his eyes. This surprised the Netherworld Old Ancestor. Could Suyu take out the treasures that Old Ancestor Green Hat was looking forward to? The rest of the people were not interested, especially the Burning Flame family ancestor. He waved his hand impatiently. "All right, if you're here to share the treasures, I advise you not to take them out and embarrass yourself. What kind of treasures have you not seen?" He wasn't here to participate in the discussion at all. He was here to deliberately cause trouble. Suyu wasn't annoyed. Just as he had said to the sinful lady before, he had invited them today not to establish his authority by force, but to negotiate with benefits. His palm flashed, and a jade box was spinning in his palm. The jade box was foggy, and a silvery stone could be vaguely seen inside. The heavenly fresh stone. The Burning Flame family ancestor snorted. "Although this item is valuable, if you take it out and say it's a treasure to share, aren't you treating us like bumpkins?" Although this item was precious, and they might not be willing to buy it, it would be a joke to share it with them as a priceless treasure. Suyu's expression was indifferent as he handed the jade box to the Old Ancestor Green Hat. "Pass it around one by one. Remember, you can only take a look at it." The Old Ancestor Green Hat was very curious. Wasn't it just a heavenly fresh stone? He had one in his storage space. What was so interesting about it? As he pondered, he opened the lid of the jade box and glanced inside. Then he was shocked. His eyes shrank, and his old body couldn't help but tremble. He said in horror, This is..." Before he could finish his words, Suyu made a stroke with his fingertip, and a wisp of space energy covered the jade box again. Next, the Netherworld Old Ancestor took the jade box, his heart full of doubts. Wasn't the Old Ancestor Green Hat's reaction too exaggerated? How could an old monster who had cultivated for so many years lose his composure like this? He sneered inwardly and shook his head in amusement. He opened the jade box himself, but when he looked inside, he suddenly stood up from the stone bench, his eyes wide open. A cold and gloomy aura was released invisibly, enveloping the whole pavilion. It was extremely horrifying. Fortunately, the Old Ancestor Green Hat reacted in time. He displayed a huge domain and protected all the people in the pavilion. Otherwise, they would have been seriously injured or killed by the Netherworld Old Ancestor's gloomy aura. "Netherworld, calm down. You are an old monster who has cultivated for so many years." The Old Ancestor Green Hat scolded him. Tomorrow morning. Chapter 3001. The Netherworld Ancestor turned a deaf ear to him. He stared at the Heavenly Vitality Stone in the jade box without blinking. On the Heavenly Vitality Stone, the Netherworld Ancestor saw something unbelievable. His breath quickened, and he could not help but reach out his hand to touch the Heavenly Vitality Stone. However, at that moment, a wave of space energy surged over and covered the jade box again. "Next," Suyu said. The Netherworld Ancestor passed the jade box to the next person reluctantly. After the two vassal forces of the Great Saint saw it, they were equally shocked. This strange scene caused many of the forces that had not seen it to be completely baffled. What could have shocked the two old monsters so much? With their status, they had seen all kinds of treasures. Why were they so excited about a piece of heavenly vitality stone? Let me have a look. The burning flame ancestor stood up and snatched the jade box, trying to see what was inside. Before he could grab it, a wave of space energy swept the jade box away and returned it to Suyu's palm. He said calmly, "We'll talk in batches. You stay behind." "Why?" The burning flame ancestor said with a straight face. "Are you disrespecting the burning flame family?" Suyu looked at him and said indifferently, "I'm not familiar with the burning flame family, so you don't have to give me any face." He was mainly talking about the Saint clan, not the big families. Moreover, the big families who came were not friendly. Whether he would talk to them or not depended on Suyu's mood. Say that again? The flames on the burning flame ancestor's body surged, and he looked like he was about to lose his temper. However, all of a sudden, the burning flame ancestor felt a chill run down his spine. He looked sideways and saw the netherworld ancestor staring at him expressionlessly. His cold eyes were full of warning. He said slowly, "Be quiet." The burning flame ancestor was surprised. The netherworld ancestor was speaking for Suyu? What on earth was on the heavenly vitality stone? However, since the great saint had spoken, he had to restrain himself no matter how much he relied on the puppet saint clan. He snorted and sat down to observe the situation. The netherworld ancestor looked at Suyu and nodded. "It seems I didn't come here in vain." If he had listened to his clansman's suggestion and refused this meeting, he probably wouldn't have been able to see such a shocking object. Suyu smiled faintly. "Thank you, Ancestor Yuming, for taking a liking to this little thing. If you don't mind, I can let you look at it once a year. Each time, you can look at it for 2 hours at most." The netherworld ancestor's pupils constricted when he heard this, and he couldn't conceal the burning desire in his eyes. Of course, he was clearly aware that there was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. Moreover, this wasn't a free lunch at all, but a great fortune that was difficult to come by in an era. He said secretively, "As long as it doesn't harm the fundamental interests of the Holy Netherworld clan, anything can be discussed." From the very beginning, he had set his bottom line extremely low. This was because he felt that for such an unparalleled treasure, such a great opportunity, the price to pay would definitely be extraordinary. "You're exaggerating, old Ancestor Yuming." So you waved his hand and chuckled. "What I want is very simple." He drew 4 words in the air with his finger. The netherworld old ancestor fixed his eyes on it and could not help but be surprised. An alliance of attack and defense? The so-called offensive and defensive alliance was to deal with enemies together and seize benefits together. However, wasn't this request a little too simple? He was pondering whether there was a deeper meaning behind the words. "Is that all?" the netherworld old ancestor asked tentatively. Suyu nodded. "That's all. As long as you keep your promise, I can fulfill my promise too." Upon hearing this, the netherworld old ancestor's breathing quickened. He said, "All right, I can promise you on behalf of the Holy Netherworld clan right now. From now on, as long as the Holy Netherworld clan exists on the Sangtian Mountain, we will be allies with the Cauldron forever." As a great saint, his promise naturally carried great weight. "All right," Suyu nodded. With their realm and status, they no longer needed the so-called agreement. If the Netherworld old ancestor did not want to abide by the agreement, what was the point of having an agreement? It had no binding force on him at all. The real binding force was the heavenly vitality stone in Suyu's hand. The Netherworld old ancestor was overjoyed. He looked at the heavenly vitality stone in Suyu's palm from time to time, looking forward to it. Then, Suyu looked at the green hat old ancestor. "My request to the Greenwood Saint clan is the same." The green hat old ancestor smiled and nodded repeatedly. "What kind of relationship do you have with me?" "I agree, of course I agree." Thus, the Greenwood Saint clan signed an alliance with the Cauldron. Then, Suyu looked at the 2 vassal forces of the Holy Clan. Before Suyu could ask, they said hurriedly, "Of course we agree." How could they not agree to such a great deal? Unexpectedly, Suyu said, "I haven't stated my conditions yet. How could the requirements of the Holy Clan and the great families be the same?" He did not expect the great families to provide much help to the Cauldron. If you want to have a look at the contents of the Heavenly Vitality Stone, I need you to promise me one thing, Suyu said. Cauldron Master, please say it. The leaders of the forces could not help but ask. They had to get the contents of the Heavenly Vitality Stone at any cost. It was definitely an epic-level opportunity for a family to prosper for a long time. Suyu said, I want you to become a member of the Cauldron within 100 years and serve it for 100 years. After 100 years, you can stay in the Cauldron or leave it as you wish. The faces of the Netherworld Old Ancestor and the Green Hat Old Ancestor changed slightly. Was he going to annex these forces? The two great saints were not willing, because these were all vassal forces. Now that they were annexed by the Cauldron, was he trying to poach them? However, after the two of them looked at each other, they quickly made up their minds. Based on the contents of the Heavenly Vitality Stone, if they could really learn it, how could the vassal families compare? In the future, tens of thousands of great families in the world would come to seek refuge with them. More importantly, they must not provoke Suyu. If he left the Songtian Mountain in a fit of anger, with the help of the Heavenly Vitality Stone, there would be plenty of holy clans in the world who would be willing to form an alliance with Suyu. By then, the two holy clans might not have this opportunity. The leaders of the forces said almost without hesitation, we agree. The two holy clans were vassals, and joining the Cauldron was also a form of vassal. They were just changing masters, so why not? There was no loss, and they could obtain the shocking contents of the Heavenly Vitality Stone. Naturally, they had to agree. All right, so you nodded and agreed. Every 3 years, you will have a chance to look at it. 3 years? It was far less frequent than the holy clans. However, it was good enough to give them a chance. They did not dare to ask for more, so they nodded and agreed. After all of them had finished their discussion, the ones who were left were a group of forces with ill intentions. Suyu looked at them, but did not hand the jade box over to them. He said, First, tell me what you want to talk to me about today. It was obvious that they were not here to listen to Suyu's discussion, but to talk to him about something. Juan Old Ancestor looked at the jade box in Suyu's hand in bewilderment. He was rather curious about what was inside. It had actually facilitated the alliance of two holy clans, several great families, and the Cauldron in such a short time. Chapter 3002. Speak, Suyu said indifferently. After weighing the pros and cons, Ancestor Juan said, Today, I am here to inform you that the Huang family once owed us a sum of money. Now that you have inherited the Huang family, you should repay this debt. As he spoke, Ancestor Vian took out a thick stack of contracts. The one at the top had a debt of 10 billion soul stones, which was equivalent to the accumulation of the family for decades. Moreover, there was only one, and the thick stack below was an IOU. The total amount would be astronomical. As the saying goes, it is only right and proper to repay debts. Ancestor Juyen shook the thick contract. Please abide by the agreement and continue to repay the debt. Because the Cauldron Zun had formed an alliance with the two Saint clans, Ancestor Juyen spoke more politely. Ancestor Green Hat snorted and said, Juyen, don't go too far. Tell me clearly how these contracts came about. Don't use chicken feathers as a token of authority. In the history of the Huang family, for several eras, there was a drastic change in the family. The strong men of the family died one after another, leaving only an ancient saint and many of the younger generation. At that time, the Huang family was surrounded by enemies, eyeing them covetously. In desperation, the Huang family asked for help from the Burning Flame family. The Burning Flame family immediately sent a large number of experts to the Huang family to protect them, which helped the Huang family survive. However, they took advantage of the situation and forced the Huang family to sign a large number of soulstone contracts every year. The minimum was billions, and the maximum was tens of billions. After so many years of accumulation, it had become an astronomical figure. All the wealth the Huang family had fought for since the beginning of the era was used to repay the interest of these high debts. It could be said that the Huang family had become the slaves of the Burning Flame family. Until recently, when the entire Huang family disappeared, The Burning Flame family could not continue to blackmail them. Now that they found out that a force had come to occupy the Huang family, they came up with a plan to replace the Huang family and become their slaves. Ancestor Burning Flame didn't care. Because he was backed by the Sacred Puppet Clan, he wasn't afraid of Ancestor Green Hat at all. He shrugged and said, "The agreement is written in black and white, binding. Why am I being excessive?" He looked at Suyu and said, "According to the past situation, the repayment this month is 1 billion soul stones, plus the debt from the past few months, a total of 80 memory soul stones." He stretched out his hand. "Give it to me." Suyu was expressionless. He had thought that they had come to claim the Huang family's territory. He did not expect them to have other intentions. "Ridiculous," Old Ancestor Netherworld said indifferently. "Junior, don't be too arrogant." He said to Suyu, "If the Cauldron Master doesn't mind, I can give you a good piece of the sacred Netherworld tribe's territory for the use of the Cauldron Master's people." How could the Saint race's territory be inferior to the Huang family's? He was quite sincere. "No." However, Ancestor Burning Flame rudely objected. He snorted and said, "Since you've accepted the Huang family's territory, whether you live here or not, you've inherited their debts. You must pay them back." The two old ancestors glared at him. Ancestor Zhua Yin really didn't take them seriously. He had already spoken to this extent, yet he still dared to be so arrogant. So he stood up and did not speak. Instead, he raised his head and looked at the sky without uttering a single word. "What? You don't want to admit it?" Ancestor Scorching Flame flicked his sleeves and said coldly, "Let me tell you, don't even think about leaving Hidden Heaven Mountain without paying off your debt." The masters of the other forces stood up one after another and stood behind Ancestor Scorching Flame. Their meaning was self-evident. They were standing up for Ancestor Scorching Flame. Right at that moment, a cracking sound came from beyond the sky. Everyone looked up and saw the sky had been torn apart by a giant hand. The space in the living room had been forcibly torn apart by a strong man with absolute strength. "Ha, you're all here." From the crack, a one-eyed old woman with sparse white hair walked in with a hunched back. Her face was full of wrinkles, and all her teeth had fallen out. She staggered down from the crack. Apart from Suyu, everyone else was stunned when they saw her. This person could tear the space with her bare hands. So, she must be a strong man above the ancient saint level. But why was she so unfamiliar? They had never seen her on Hidden Heaven Mountain. She had never appeared in the entire cloud, desolate territory. Ancestor Green Hat frowned and stepped forward to stop her. "Stop. We are discussing important matters. Who allowed you to barge in? Get out." With a shake of his sleeves, a cloud of green mist turned into giant runes that sealed off the sky and advanced rapidly, trying to force her out. "Huh? How many years has it been since someone dared to attack me?" The old woman laughed hoarsely and raised her finger to lightly tap the air. The runes that were sweeping toward her were all shattered with a cracking sound on the spot. The shattered runes continued to tumble backwards with even more ferocious force. Only then did Ancestor Green Hat realize that this person's strength was astonishing. He drew lines of runes with both hands to offset the rune fragments that were attacking him. However, the runes that were easily shattered by the opponent were extremely fierce. The runes that the Green Hat Ancestor had drawn were all pierced through. The rune fragments bombarded the Green Hat Ancestor's body, causing emerald flames to erupt. Ancestor Green Hat was forced back repeatedly. He tasted blood in his throat, and his body was badly mutilated with streaks of green blood flowing out. His pupils constricted as he stared at the opponent in shock. Ancestor Yuming was also shocked. He flew into the air with the tip of his toes and stood beside Ancestor Green Hat. He opened his mouth and blew out a gust of ghastly black mist, which was filled with ferocious evil spirits and was extremely gloomy. Wherever the black mist passed, it immediately devoured the remaining rune fragments. Because of this, the black mist became much stronger. Then, it turned into a sky-covering skeleton and swallowed the ill-intentioned old woman. Ancestor Yuming heaved a sigh of relief. With the power of his nether domain, Once the target was swallowed, they would be corroded by the black mist and would be melted in a moment. However, the next moment, a ball of purple flames appeared in the skeleton. Ah! The black mist skeleton immediately let out a blood-curdling scream. Then, it was quickly burned into ashes. Only the old woman was left in the center. She was completely unharmed. The purple flames on the surface of her body quickly left her body and condensed into an incomparably ferocious demon behind her. The demon's patterns were clear, and it was breathing heavily through its nostrils, as if it was a living creature. Seeing this thing, Old Ancestor Yu Ming and Old Ancestor Green Hat both gasped, and their expressions were extremely shocked. This is a sky-covering giant demon? They had never seen that demon before, but they had seen it in many ancient books. It was the symbol of the Super Saint clan, the sky-covering clan. It could be stimulated by the power of the bloodline and become a part of their combat power. The two of them felt as if their throats were blocked by something, and they couldn't speak. How could a member of the Super Saint clan come here? Why? Since you know, you should leave. I'm not here for the two of you. The old woman walked over slowly, but her eyes were fixed on Suyu. At this moment, Suyu's chest was burning hot. He didn't have to look to know that it was a curse left by the sky-covering demon. As long as a member of the sky-covering clan was nearby, it would be triggered. Chapter 3003. However, Suyu's expression was very calm, as if he had already guessed the old woman's intention. A month ago, after leaving the Tiandu Square, Suyu felt this strange movement of the curse in his chest. If he guessed correctly, the sinful lady must have been recognized by the shopkeeper of the Guangtian Pavilion when she was selling Gai Tianma's things in the Guangtian Pavilion, and the Gai Tian clan was informed. Therefore, Suyu had been waiting for this day. As for the invitation, he did choose this day to show the power of the Cauldron Master to the people attending the meeting, so as to deter them from having evil thoughts when he was not here. However, he did not predict that the people of the Gai Tian clan would come on this day. It was just a coincidence. The Green Hat Old Ancestor and the Yuming Old Ancestor felt their scalps go numb. The experts of the Gai Tian clan had come to the Tsangtian Mountain in person. Who else could they be looking for? The one I am looking for is him. The old woman walked over slowly with a hunchback. With every step she took, the curse in Suyu's chest became more intense. Gradually, it became burning hot, and his chest became red. Suyu said calmly, "You came at the right time. This curse has been in my body for too long, and I need someone from the Gai Tian clan to remove it." The old woman laughed sinisterly. "You are brave. This is the first time I have seen someone who dared to be so arrogant after killing a member of the Gai Tian clan. TSK, young man, you are not simple." "What?" The Yuming Old Ancestor and the Green Hat Old Ancestor gasped. Suyu had killed a member of the Gai Tian clan? How? How much courage did he have? At this moment, the two old ancestors felt like they had boarded a pirate ship. They had the same thought in their minds, to draw a line with the Cauldron. Although they were also from the Holy Clan, there was a world of difference between them and the Gai Tian clan. Suyu said, "So, you are here to kill me today?" He was ready to fight. The other party had come from thousands of miles away, so she would not give up easily. However, the old woman laughed and said, "What do you think?" Suyu did not say a word. He took out the great sickle and said calmly, "Then I will kill another member of the Gai Tian clan." However, to everyone's surprise, including Suyu's, the old woman said, "What's the point of killing you?" Suyu hesitated for a moment, then said, "I am the enemy of the Gai Tian clan. Whether it is because of the prestige of the Gai Tian clan or because of hatred, you have a reason to kill me." The old woman's reply was truly unexpected. Even the two sacred clans could not understand what was going on. They had thought that the old woman had come in a threatening manner to seek revenge. What if this old woman not only doesn't kill you, but also gives you a chance? The old woman said mysteriously. Although the plan had changed, Suyu did not panic. He said, "Tell me about it first. If they could avoid the slaughter between the heaven-covering clan and the Cauldron, why couldn't they?" The old woman made a grabbing motion, and the demon head turned back into a purple flame and returned to her body. "To be honest, my sky-covering clan has encountered some trouble recently. I would like to ask for your help." the old woman said. Su Yu's eyes flickered slightly. This was a problem that even the sky-covering clan couldn't solve. Yet they needed Su Yu's help. Even the tip of one's toe could imagine that the trouble was not just a little, but even bigger than the heavens. Make it clear. What kind of help do you need? Su Yu naturally would not agree carelessly. The old woman walked into the pavilion, sat down slowly, and tapped her fingers on the table. A line of words flashed across the table. Kill the strong men of the All Saints. The words disappeared in an instant, and they were enhanced by the old woman's special power. Only Su Yu saw them, and no one else could see them clearly. Su Yu's pupils shrank violently, and he said solemnly, Your Excellency, don't you think too highly of me? Kill the strong men of the All Saints? How could she even think of such a thing? A top-notch great saint was already extremely powerful. Back then, he had fought against 2 great saints of the Sword Saint clan alone, and he had forced Su Yu into dangerous situations several times. Wasn't dealing with the strong men of the All Saints just like courting death? The old woman said, Of course, we didn't count on you alone. In fact, you're just a support. Our ancestor Gai Tian and the various alliances are the main forces. Su Yu's eyes were calm, and he flatly refused. I'm sorry. I can't help you. Although he said he was a support, who knew if he would be used as cannon fodder in a real battle. The old woman was silent for a while, then pointed to the curse on Su Yu's chest and said, Young man, do you know that the curse has a time limit? Huh? What does that mean? Su Yu's eyes narrowed. I guess you have tried it, and no power can remove the curse, right? The old woman looked at Su Yu deeply. Su Yu didn't deny this. Over the past year, he had used the power of chaos, the power of the saint body, and even the 8 great domains, but the curse had not been worn down in the slightest. It was like a stubborn disease, and he couldn't get rid of it no matter what. That's because the curse of the Gai Tian clan was triggered by the bloodline of the Gai Tian clan, and the ancestor of the Gai Tian clan was a strong man of the All Saints level. There is no power in the world that can remove the curse left by his bloodline, unless... The old woman said, Unless you can get the blood of the strong man of the All Saints and wash it away with their blood. So he was surprised. The ancestor of the Gai Tian clan was a strong man of the All Saints level. At his level, the power of the bloodline had already undergone a qualitative change, and it couldn't be removed by ordinary power. However, if he followed the old woman's words and took the risk to kill the strong man of the All Saints, it would be too risky. What if I don't remove it? Su Yu had studied the curse for a long time, but he hadn't found any harm to it. The old woman laughed hoarsely. So what? As I said just now, the curse has a time limit. In 10 years at most, the curse will break out. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. Break out? What happened then? Would it cause harm to his body? After a pause, the old woman said, After the curse breaks out, you won't die, but everyone around you will. The curse will devour your mind and control you into a demonic creature that has lost all sense of reason. The closer you are to someone, the more you will want to kill them. Don't count on luck. Before the ancestor of the Gai Tian clan died, he fought with a strong man of the All Saints who was a descendant of the Son of Heaven. He activated the curse with the power of his bloodline. Just 3 years later, the curse broke out, causing the strong man of the All Saints to lose all sense of reason. He killed all of his clansmen, leaving no one alive, and kept killing the stone men of the same bloodline. In the end, the Xiaoyao Son of Heaven came and ended his life. The old woman looked at Su Yu and said hoarsely, I know you are proficient in the field of souls, but so what? No matter how strong your soul is it stronger than the strong man of the All Saints? Of course not. Even the strong men of the All Saints couldn't avoid the curse breaking out, let alone Su Yu. Once Su Yu lost control, the first person he wanted to kill would be Su Ke, then Xia Jingyu, the sinful woman, Shengge, and so on. Chapter 3004. Moreover, with Su Yu's great power, they would definitely not be able to resist him. This curse was far more dangerous than he had imagined. How is it? Are you afraid? The old woman said with a smile that was not a smile. Su Yu was silent for a moment, then shook his head slightly. I can only tell you that I'm sorry, but I still can't agree to it. The heaven-engulfing curse was indeed powerful, and it could possibly harm the people around Suyu. But so what? The cursed body belonged to Heavenly Prince Mirror Flower, not Suyu. As long as the body was returned, the curse on Mirror Flower, Heavenly Prince, would break out. It had nothing to do with Suyu. He couldn't wait for the curse to break out sooner. Really, if you are here to take my life, I will accompany you to the end. If you are here to negotiate with me, I am sorry, but I am powerless. Suyu was unusually calm. The old woman was startled. She had tried so hard to persuade Suyu, and she had assumed that Suyu would give in. But in the end, he was not afraid at all? Are you sure? According to my estimation, your curse will only break out in 10 years at most. If you can't control it properly, it might even take 3 to 5 years, the old woman warned again. 3 to 5 years might not even be enough to cover a long journey. Suyu leaned against the chair calmly and said, "Come on, it's best if you can erupt this year. 3 to 5 years is too long." He said leisurely, "The bloodline power of the covering heaven demon that died in my hands doesn't look pure, but it actually took 10 years. It's too slow." After the old woman ascertained that Suyu wasn't joking, she became confused. He's not afraid of death. Of course, Suyu was afraid of death. However, he was not the one who would die, so of course he was not afraid. "Young man, although I don't know what you're relying on, please reconsider." Since threats didn't work, the old woman could only try to tempt him with benefits. To be honest, that Wan Sheng warrior has just returned from an ancient tomb. He might have a divine item that can affect the structure of the 9-star civilizations. Oh, what was it that was so exaggerated that it could even affect the situation of a 9-star civilization? Seeing the doubt in Suyu's eyes, the old woman used her finger to write another line of words on the table. Sinkhole, Empyrean Lord. What? Suyu's pupils shrank. Sinkhole, Empyrean Lord? Wasn't that the original owner of the Sinkhole Monument? He actually has an ancient tomb in this world. Could it be that the Sinkhole Empyrean Lord was already dead? As the old woman observed Suyu's expression, she revealed a profound smile and said, "It seems like I really underestimated you. It turns out that you also knew about his existence." Very few people knew of the existence of the Sinkhole Emperor Lord. Even many of the Saint clans had never heard of it. The old woman was worried that Suyu might not know the name of the ultimate Emperor Master. Unexpectedly, not only did he know, but he also seemed to know quite a lot. "Is that really an ancient tomb?" Suyu asked. The old woman hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. "I'm not sure, but since ancient times, very few people have come out alive." In other words, it was very likely that the myriad saint expert was the only one to come out alive after all these years. It was completely unknown what he had brought out. "How about it? Are you interested in joining?" The old woman smiled and said, "Anything brought out from there, even a speck of dust, is extraordinary." So you fell into a deep silence. If it was a treasure, he wouldn't even hesitate to reject it. However, he could not reject anything related to the Sinkhole Emperor Lord, because it was related to Qin Siener's resurrection. After thinking for a long time, Suyu made up his mind. "How can you be sure that I am qualified to join the battle? After all, I am just a small middle-stage master of the Heaven Law." Hearing this, the old woman smiled and said, "You don't have to hide it. In the Battle of the Blood Mountain, you killed 2 great saints of the Sword Saint clan. This matter has spread throughout the circle of the Saint clan. There is no one who doesn't know about your legend. And this is also the reason why I came to you. It was precisely because Suyu was useful that the Sky Guy clan changed their minds. Instead of killing him, it was better to make use of his strength. For a Super Saint clan like the Sky Guy clan, feelings and honor were no longer the most important thing. What was important was the interests. As the ancients said, there were no eternal enemies, only eternal interests." "What?" The ghost ancestor was startled, and a chill ran down his spine. Only now did he know that Suyu had killed 2 peerless experts of the Sword Saint clan. If the old woman had not told him, he would not have known. He glanced at the green hat ancestor and saw that he was calm. Obviously, he had known about it long ago. He could not help but stare at him. How could he have kept it from him for so long? At this moment, the ghost ancestor was extremely glad that he had made a wise decision. He did not recklessly occupy the territory of the Huang family. Instead, he observed the situation and did not advance rashly. Otherwise, he would have had a conflict with the cauldron unknowingly. Just thinking about it sent chills down his spine. He looked at Su Yu with unprecedented awe in his eyes. The idea of seizing the heavenly vitality stone in his mind was quickly extinguished. He did not even dare to think about it anymore. The ghost ancestor was shocked. How could the flame ancestor be any better? If the words had not come from the peerless experts of the Sky Guy clan, he would not have believed that Su Yu had killed 2 of the 10,000 saints of the Sword Saint clan. He secretly took a deep breath. Suddenly, he felt that the contract in his hand was extremely hot, and he wanted to burn it all down. Su Yu frowned slightly. Did the news spread so fast? He was a little worried that the Sword Saint clan would come to cause trouble. The old woman laughed. The news was earth-shattering, and many forces were present at that time. How could not spread quickly? However, you can rest assured that the Sword Saint clan is not in the mood to cause trouble for you now. They can't even protect themselves. Originally, there were only 4 great saints left, which could barely maintain the operations of the Sword Saint clan. Now that they had lost 2 more, there were only 2 great saints left to support them. They could barely protect the Sword Saint clan. So how could they spare the energy to seek revenge on Su Yu? If that was the case, then he could rest assured. Time and place, Su Yu said. The old woman smiled knowingly and said, Cauldron Master is a smart man. I can promise you on behalf of the Sky Guy clan that no matter whether this matter succeeds or fails, the grievances between us will be written off, and we will never cause trouble for you and the Cauldron again. After saying that, she took out a piece of paper and put it on the table. Then, she stood up and said, I will leave now. Su Yu silently put away the piece of paper and said, Okay. The old woman leaped into the void. Before leaving, she looked at the flame ancestor, wanting to say something, but stopped on second thought. Forget it, just take care of yourself. She left the Sangtian mountain. When she looked down at the Sangtian mountain from a very high place in the sky, her old eyebrows furrowed. Strange, did I sense it wrong just now? Why does it feel a little like the aura of that person? The old woman pondered. After pondering for a while, she glanced at the ground, trying to find out the situation of the Sangtian mountain. However, just as the old woman's eyes swept over the Puppet Saint clan, a cold snort sounded in her mind. Since you know it's me, why don't you get out of here? Ah! The old woman screamed, and her soul almost collapsed. She held her head and fled in horror, not even daring to look back. Chapter 3005. After fleeing for 3 days and 3 nights, he finally stopped when he was completely out of the cloud-desolate territory. He could not help but gasp for breath. His face was pale as he murmured, That person, he is still alive? Impossible, impossible, the ancestors clearly cursed him back then, and he was finally killed by Prince Xiaoyao. How could he still be alive? And he even got rid of the ancestors' curse? Just now, she felt a cursed aura on Ancestors Rien. At first, she thought that the person was infected by the cursed aura because he was with Su Yu. However, when she carefully examined it before leaving, she found that it was obviously not right. The cursed aura on Ancestor Yin was very old and not caused by Su Yu's curse. The only explanation was that there was a cursed person nearby, and he was extremely old. This reminded her of the strong men of all saints who were cursed by the ancestors. That was why she investigated out of curiosity, but the result of the investigation shocked her. We must report this to the ancestor. The real trouble is coming, the old woman said, trembling with fear. If it was really the enemy from back then the end of the Heaven Guy clan was not far away. 3 days ago, in the pavilion, Su Yu looked at the sky in surprise. He felt that after the old woman left, she had probed the Sangtian mountain with her eyes, but soon left again. Did she find anything? Su Yu thought for a moment, but did not take it to heart. He sat down again, looked at Ancestor Rien again, and said lightly, Let's talk about the debt again. You just said that you want us to pay the interest for nearly a year, 10 billion soul stones, right? Ancestor Yin immediately stood up as if there were thorns under his buttocks. He said timidly, That was all a misunderstanding. I didn't mean that. Suyu looked at him coldly. So you mean that I am deaf? Did he think he was so easy to fool? Just now, this person was very arrogant, looking down on everyone, and insisted that Suyu pay the interest in the future. Ancestor Zhuyan's hair stood on end when Suyu looked at him. This was a demonic existence who killed 2 strong men of the famed Sword Saint clan all by himself. It would not be a problem for him to wipe out the Sangtian Mountain alone. The puppet Saint clan behind him might not be able to withstand him. His heart trembled, and he hurriedly bowed and said, This lowly one had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please forgive this lowly one's mistake and forgive this junior's rudeness. Suyu laughed and said, You really know how to do business without any capital. If the blackmail was successful, it would be tens of billions of soul stones. If it failed, it would just be an apology, and there would be nothing to pay. Ancestor Scorching Flame's mouth was filled with bitterness. He knew that he couldn't put up a perfunctory front right now, so he could only say, What does my lord want? My Scorching Flame family will not be stingy. Suyu said calmly, Because of your disrespect just now, I should kill you. Ancestor Burning Flame shuddered and bowed. Please have mercy, senior. However, it's my first time here on the Sangtian Mountain, and I don't want to start a massacre, Suyu said. As long as you're willing to do something for me, I'll let you go. Ancestor Scorching Flame saw a glimmer of hope and hurriedly said, Milord, please have mercy on me. Tell me what I can do. Suyu said, It's very simple. I'll give you a month's time. Ask all the middle-sized and above influences on the Sangtian Mountain to come to the Cauldron. His initial plan was to unite all the effective influences on the Sangtian Mountain with the Cauldron as the center. If there were any difficulties in the future, he could mobilize all the forces on the Sangtian Mountain to resist the enemy. He could even order them to be used by the Cauldron to expand its territory. That's all. Ancestor Burning Flame was a little surprised. He had thought that Suyu would ask for an exorbitant price, but it turned out to be such a simple request. Do it immediately. I don't have to tell you the consequences if one is missing, Suyu said. Ancestor Burning Flame cupped his fists repeatedly. I'll do it. After a pause, he immediately looked troubled and said bitterly, I can persuade other influences, but I can't do anything about the Sacred Puppet Clan. The Sacred Puppet Clan? Suyu frowned slightly and said, I'll go to the Sacred Puppet Clan myself. Whether it was for the Alliance or to borrow their fire pool, he had to go there personally. Why don't we accompany you? Ancestor Green Hat's expression was a little solemn. The people of the Sacred Puppet Clan are not easy to deal with. If you go, they may not treat you well. It might be better with the 2 of us by your side. Ancestor Yuming agreed. Well, the Sacred Puppet Clan is always mysterious. It's better to have more people accompanying me. Of course, Suyu would not refuse the company of 2 great saints. Let's pay a visit now. There was no time like the present. It was better to solve the matter of the Sangtian Mountain as soon as possible. The 3 of them left immediately and went to the territory of the Sacred Puppet Clan. Like the Soulwood Sacred Clan and the Netherworld Sacred Clan, the Sacred Puppet Clan also occupied the best territory on the Sangtian Mountain. However, the Sacred Puppet Clan was extremely low-key and only had a small territory. What was different was that its mansion was an extremely well-made giant puppet, and half of its body was buried underground. The mouth of the puppet was the entrance of the Sacred Puppet Clan. Looking at the giant puppet, Ancestor Yuming and Ancestor Green Hat were obviously a little afraid. The former said, This puppet is both a mansion and a fighting puppet of the Sacred Puppet Clan. Years ago, it suddenly came and forcibly occupied a part of the Sangtian Mountain. It fought with both of us. Suyu looked at the puppet and was speechless. He was no stranger to puppets. When he was an 8-star civilization, he once obtained a powerful black ape puppet. Later, the puppet was completely destroyed. What was the result? Suyu asked. Ancestor Green Hat sighed. Cauldron Zune must be joking. We lost. Oh, a puppet that fought against 2 great saints alone? Ancestor Yuming had a look of fear in his eyes. This is because the people of the Sacred Puppet Clan did not attack. Otherwise, they would have no problem occupying the entire Tsangtia Mountain. So you finally understood why they were so afraid of Ancestor Vuyen, a vassal of the Sacred Puppet Clan. The Sacred Puppet Clan was really powerful. If it weren't for Cauldron Zun's presence today, to be honest, we wouldn't even want to step into the Sacred Puppet Clan. Looking at the giant puppet, the memory of the battle was still fresh in their minds. So you said calmly, "No need. We're not here to provoke. We're just here to negotiate peacefully." Even if the negotiation failed, there would be no harm. No matter how difficult it was to deal with the Sacred Puppet Clan, they would not turn hostile for no reason, right? The three of them walked towards the entrance of the Sacred Puppet Clan. As soon as they reached the entrance, two golden beams of light were brewing in the eyes of the puppet, aiming at Ancestor Yu Ming and Ancestor Green Hat respectively. The two of them stiffened and immediately went on full alert. "What are you two doing here?" A soft snort came from the puppet. It was the ancestor of the Sacred Puppet Clan, the ancestor of the Sacred Puppet Clan. His tone was very unfriendly, and he did not show up in person. Suyu sighed secretly. It was really difficult to deal with. Chapter 3006. However, since he was already here, he might as well give it a try. Old Ancestor Green Hat looked around warily and said, as a fellow great sage of Tsang Tian Mountain, can I pay a visit to the puppet ancestor? I'm not free." The puppet patriarch bluntly refused, not giving any face to the Green Hat patriarch. Old Ancestor Green Hat lost all his face, but he wasn't angry. The puppet patriarch had always been this kind of person, and he wouldn't get angry. The patriarch of the Netherworld said sinisterly, "To be honest, someone from the Super Sacred Clan, the Heaven Covering Clan, came here just now. Aren't you worried, patriarch of the puppet tribe?" The Sacred Puppet Clan fell silent for a moment, and then the huge puppet's mouth slowly opened, and a cold voice came from within. "Don't touch or look around after you come in, or I'll expel you immediately." The two patriarchs looked at each other and smiled bitterly. After all, the two of them had been defeated by the puppet patriarch in the past, so they did not receive any respect from him. With their cultivation and realm, did they really need someone to remind them not to touch it? So you fell into deep thought. Could there be some unspeakable secret within the Puppet Saint clan? Why did they warn him so deliberately? Hiding this doubt in his heart, he followed the two ancestors into the Sacred Puppet tribe. What entered his sight was an enormous pitch-black space. This was the interior of the giant puppet. Although the interior was huge, it was filled with intricate components. There were more than 100 million of them. So many parts were operating, maintaining the giant puppet. This was when the giant puppet was in a stationary state. If it started fighting, more parts would be activated. Old Ancestor Green Hat sighed in amazement. This puppet is tens of thousands of times more complex than a living being's body. It's not an injustice that we were defeated by this puppet. Old Ancestor Netherworld deeply agreed. Every single part of the puppet was perfect and flawless. Only in this way could a super strong Great Saint puppet be constructed. So he was also very surprised. Compared to the exquisite puppet before him, the black ape puppet he'd obtained in the past seemed to be extremely crude. Look at that gear. If I'm not mistaken, it should be made from the blue hard iron, which is extinct in the last era, Ancestor Green Hat suddenly said as he pointed at the nearest component. So you had heard of the blue heart iron before. It was a type of ore that could self-repair and grow. The parts that were lost would be restored in a short period of time. This item was not sold by the caddy, nor by the tail, but by the grain. In the previous era, a single grain of blue hard iron was worth 10 billion soul stones. In the current era, one wouldn't even see 50 billion soul stones being sold, because there was no such thing on the market. But the puppet in front of him actually had a key component that was forged from blue hard iron. This gear contained over 1,000 pieces of blue hard iron. It was easy to imagine how valuable it was. What are you all standing there for? A dissatisfied voice resounded from within the puppet. The Golem Patriarch was urging them to hurry up. Old Ancestor Yu Ming and the others had no choice but to move forward until they reached the neck of the puppet. A large hall floated in midair. Inside, there was a short but extremely muscular dwarf dressed in a black robe. He was holding a hammer and hammering a puppet. He was the ancestor of the puppet saint tribe. Old ancestor Green Hat and old ancestor Yu Ming were much more vigilant. They brought Su Yu into the hall and bowed to the golem patriarch with cupped fists. The golem patriarch is still the same as always. The golem patriarch didn't even look at them. He raised his hammer and hammered the puppet. Without turning his head, he said, "What's the matter? Say it and leave immediately." Such impoliteness really caused the two old ancestors to be angry, but have nowhere to vent. This punching shorty still had a bad temper. Old ancestor Green Hat looked at Su Yu and let him speak. Su Yu glanced at the puppet and said, "I'm the leader of the Cauldron. I have 2 matters to discuss with you. First, I want to invite you to join the Hidden Sky Mountain Alliance. At present, the 2 ancestors have already joined." Before he could finish, he was interrupted by the golem patriarch. "I'm not interested. Tell me the second matter." Old ancestor Green Hat and old ancestor Yu Ming looked helpless. Before they came, they had a hunch that with the bad temper of the golem patriarch, he would most likely not agree to join any alliance. He only wanted to focus on making puppets. He had never been interested in the conflicts of the outside world. Su Yu wasn't annoyed. He continued, "The second matter, I want to borrow your clan's fire pool to make something." Crack! All of a sudden, a long crack appeared on the chest of the puppet that was being hammered, revealing a large number of sophisticated parts inside. The puppet, which had taken so much effort to make, had been declared a failure. The golem patriarch was furious, and he vented his anger on Su Yu and the others. "Get lost. It's all your fault for interfering with my crafting." No matter how patient old ancestor Green Hat and old ancestor Yu Ming were, they couldn't stand it anymore. "Golem patriarch, watch your words. It's obviously your crafting method that has a problem. What does it have to do with us?" The crack on the puppet was obviously not there after they came. It was flawed in the first place. Otherwise, how could there be a crack when he hammered it a few times normally? The golem patriarch was rude and unreasonable. He raised his hammer and said fiercely, "I told you to get lost, so get lost. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving." The 2 ancestors were furious. What the hell was this? They winked at Su Yu. Judging from today's situation, there was no way they could talk. It was better to leave as soon as possible. However, Su Yu put his hands behind his back and didn't leave. Instead, he said calmly, "How dare you call yourself the golem patriarch with such skills?" The 2 ancestors' faces changed when they heard that, and they winked at Su Yu immediately. The golem patriarch was a hot-tempered person, and he hated it when people spoke ill of him, especially when it came to crafting puppets. "Boy, do you really think I dare not do anything to you?" The golem patriarch's eyes were burning with anger. Su Yu said expressionlessly, "I'm just telling the truth." Just as the golem patriarch was filled with murderous intent, Su Yu said again, "You don't even know one of the 18 puppet techniques. How dare you call yourself the golem patriarch?" The golem patriarch, who was full of murderous intent, changed his face when he heard that. He looked at Su Yu in surprise. "What 18 puppet techniques are you talking about?" Su Yu said calmly, "Of course it's the 18 ancestral techniques of the Puppet Saint clan. It seems that you aren't even proficient in the Abyss puppet technique, let alone the others." The Puppet Saint clan was different from other clans. They used to be divided into 18 clans, and all of them made puppets their ancestral profession. Each clan had its own ancestral technique, and there were 18 of them in total. As early as a month ago, Su Yu had expected this situation, so he learned the ancestral techniques of the 3 great saint clans. He recognized the golem patriarch's hammering technique at a glance. It was the Abyss puppet technique, which was the most profound of the 18 great puppet techniques. However, many of the techniques of the golem patriarch were not exquisite. Although I don't know where you heard it from, it's ridiculous to question my crafting technique based on this, unless you can prove it to me. The golem patriarch squinted at Su Yu. Su Yu turned around slowly and walked out. He said, "Then I'll take it as a joke. Goodbye. I won't disturb your crafting of the puppets." The golem patriarch was obviously trying to provoke Su Yu into displaying the related ancestral technique. However, he was not willing to be honest. "Wait," the golem patriarch said coyly. If you can prove that my technique is not good enough, I'll forgive your recklessness and ignorance." What a sunder a little old man. He was obviously eager for Su Yu to show him the ancestral technique he wanted to see, but he refused to say it. Su Yu shook his head. "As you said, I'm just a joke, and I don't deserve to speak in the Puppet Saint clan. Goodbye." He took a step forward and left with the two ancestors. "You stop right there." The golem patriarch pestered Su Yu and said hesitantly, "If you can show me something, I'll let you use the fire pool." After saying that, he added fiercely, "But let's make this clear. If you're just talking nonsense, don't blame me for driving you away." His heart was full of desire. Of the 18 clans of puppets, the other 17 clans had long disappeared countless years ago. Even now, his people did not know that the other 17 clans had once existed in the world. However, the person in front of him had mentioned the 18 puppet techniques and accurately said that they belonged to the Abyss Puppet Clan. This really shocked the golem patriarch from the bottom of his heart. Except for him and a few ancient saints, no one in the clan knew that they were only from the Abyss Puppet Clan, and they all called themselves the Puppet Saint Clan. This person definitely knew something. Su Yu smiled softly when he heard that. The Netherworld Patriarch and the Green Hat Patriarch were even more shocked. They had dealt with the Golem Patriarch many times, but this was the first time they saw him give in to someone. This hot-tempered old thing had always started a fight at the slightest disagreement. How could he be as good-tempered as he was today? "You want to lend me the fire pool?" Su Yu smiled softly and turned to the cracked puppet. He stretched out his palm and said, "Give me the hammer." The Golem Patriarch immediately handed the puppet to Su Yu and said, "What do you want to do?" Su Yu looked at the crack and said, "I want to fuse the crack, of course." "Fuse?" The Golem Patriarch's pupil shrank. Among the 18 puppet clans, one of them cultivated the extremely rare puppet restoration technique. That kind of ancestral technique had long disappeared dozens of years ago. He had only seen some records in ancient books that only the clan master could read. Legend had it that with that kind of ancestral technique, any damaged puppet could be perfectly repaired. Even if the body was broken, there would be no problem. It was a miracle. Unfortunately, that kind of ancestral technique had long been lost. Could the fusion that Su Yu mentioned be that kind of ancestral technique? It shouldn't be possible. Su Yu floated the hammer in front of his chest, and then he kept performing hand signs. An incomparably obscure remnant mark was inserted into the hammer. Then he grabbed the hammer and gently tapped on the crack. A shocking scene appeared. With the tap, the trace on the hammer slowly merged into the crack. Then the crack slowly fused with just a simple tap. The crack, which was as wide as a finger, was reduced to the size of a hair. If the fusion continued, it would be completely repaired. The puppet restoration technique. The puppet grandmaster gasped and looked at Su Yu in shock. He asked, "Who are you?" Chapter 3007. How could a consummate skill that had been lost for countless years appear in the hands of a young man? Su Yu dropped the iron hammer and said calmly, "It doesn't matter who I am. What you need to care about is whether or not you want to learn this lost ancestral technique." The puppet ancestor's eyes lit up, but he remained reserved and said, "Ahem, if you really want to teach me, I can reluctantly learn it." Even now, he was still arrogant. Su Yu said indifferently, "Since you think it's difficult, forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything. Goodbye." Hey. The puppet ancestor immediately stopped Su Yu, rubbing his palms, and said, "Learn it. Give me the ancestral technique, and I will agree to any condition." Su Yu took out the jade box and handed it to him. "Have a look." The puppet ancestor was puzzled and said, "It's just a heavenly vitality stone. There's nothing special about it, is there?" But when he opened it, the puppet ancestor was shocked. This is all ancestral technique. However, what could make the Green Hat ancestor and the Yuming ancestor willingly ally with the Cauldron was none other than the ancestral technique. He had imprinted some of the ancestral techniques he was proficient in, including the ancestral techniques of the 3 Saint clans. The puppet ancestor's eyes swept over quickly and saw the ancestral technique for repairing puppets. His breathing quickened, and he stared at it with his eyes wide open. Leave the stone with me, and I will return it to you when I learn it. The puppet ancestor loved it. It would take a lot of time to learn an ancestral technique completely. If the heavenly vitality stone flashed and returned to Su Yu's palm, he said, I can agree to it, but others can't. The green hat ancestor and the Yuming ancestor were so anxious that their eyes almost turned red. You, like the others, have 4 hours every year to study the ancestral technique on it, Su Yu said. The premise is that you maintain an alliance with the cauldron. The puppet ancestor scratched his ears and cheeks, and his heart was itching. Oh, why is it so troublesome? He couldn't wait to learn the ancestral technique at this moment. He said eagerly, Can I look at it a little longer? Su Yu said, If I borrow the fire pool, I can look at it for 4 more hours every year. It was still too little, but compared to before, doubling the time was already a pretty good special treatment. That's fine, but I'd like to ask you one thing. Why do you want to borrow my fire pool? Although the puppet patriarch agreed, he still looked a little hesitant and worried. Su Yu closed his eyes and drew a line in the air. A space crack opened, passing through the saint puppet and the cauldron. Master Mo Hung, please come over, Su Yu said softly. Soon, Mo Hung walked over with his hands behind his back. Seeing him, Patriarch Green Hat and Patriarch Netherworld didn't show any special reaction. But the puppet patriarch's pupils constricted, and he said in shock, Could you be that genius refiner, Mo Hung? Mo Hung's reputation was so great that even the puppet ancestor knew of him. However, in a sense, the puppet patriarch's puppets could also be considered as equipment refinement. Hearing the voice, Mo Hung looked over and stared at the puppet patriarch for a long time. Then, he suddenly remembered and said, Oh, it's you. I remember that you seem to have asked me for the secret to refining puppets. Back then, Mo Hung's name had shaken the world. Countless experts had come to visit him and ask him for advice on forging weapons. The puppet patriarch in front of him was one of them. Master Mo Hung still remembers me. What an honor. The puppet patriarch was unconvinced by Patriarch Green Hat and Patriarch Netherworld, who were at the same level as him, but he was extremely respectful of Mo Hung, whose cultivation wasn't considered strong. Mo Hung nodded, and with the demeanor of a master, said, Back then, you asked me about the method to refine a puppet's heart, didn't you? What's the situation now? Su Yu was stunned. The 9-star civilization was really small. Meeting under such circumstances, the two of them could be considered old acquaintances. The puppet patriarch sighed and said, It's a shame that I haven't found a suitable heart. Since Master Mo Hung is here today, why don't you take a look at it for me? Mo Hung cast a glance at Su Yu, and after getting the latter's approval, he nodded and said, All right. After a pause, he said, If I had known that the Saint Puppet clan was your family, we wouldn't have had to go through so much trouble. He felt quite helpless. Back then, the puppet patriarch had visited him anonymously. How could he have known it was the puppet patriarch? The puppet patriarch scratched his head sheepishly. Ha, it's really a case of water rushing against the temple of the Dragon King. We don't know each other anymore. He cupped his fists at Su Yu and Mo Hung. Please come with us. Then, he looked at Patriarch Green Hat and Patriarch Netherworld. For Su Yu's sake, he finally had a better attitude. Please stay in the living room and enjoy the spiritual tea of the Saint Puppet clan. The fire pool was a secret place of the Saint Puppet clan, and ordinary people were not allowed to enter without permission. Patriarch Green Hat and Patriarch Netherworld agreed readily, and they sat in the living room to discuss quietly. Su Yu and the other two came to the bottom of the giant puppet, where the legs of the giant puppet were buried deep underground. Standing in midair, they could clearly see the giant fire pool in the shape of 2 footprints. The puppet patriarch said, Master Mo Hung, what are you going to do with the fire pool? And Mo Hung casually took out some materials and said, To refine a seal. I'll take a look at your puppet later. Great. Please use the fire pool on the left. Mo Hung was very familiar with the refining of seals. Back in the Saint Sword clan, the seals commissioned by the Saint Mountain Emperor were the most frequently refined. Moreover, it was only the seal of a great family, so it was very easy to refine. After several extremely hard materials were thrown into the fire pool, They were all burned into liquid by the natural flames of the place. Then, Mo Hung sat down cross-legged and quietly refined the seal. In just half a day, a brand new seal was floating in the middle of his palm, and the words Heavenly Law Alliance Seal were engraved on it. So you took out the original broken seal. In comparison, it was exactly the same. Even the unique aura and power contained within it were exactly the same. I can finally report to Bai Shui. Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief. One of his worries resolved, and Mo Hung casually said, "Let's take a look at the puppet you have refined." The puppet patriarch had long been anticipating it, and immediately said, "Master Mo Hung, please come to the fire pool on the right." Su Yu followed curiously. What kind of puppet was it that even the puppet patriarch needed to ask someone else for guidance? Beside the fire pool on the right, the puppet patriarch pressed a button, and a 10-jong-tall puppet rose from the fire pool. The puppet was made of materials that were neither gold nor wood, but it had an extremely unique luster. There was a black hole in the puppet's chest, indicating that a heart had not been installed. This was a half-finished puppet, but even so, Su Yu felt his heart palpitate with fear at first glance. He had only felt this way when he was facing the clone of Prince Xiaoyao when he was still weak. A feeling of absolute oppression lingered in Su Yu's heart for a long time. Even Mo Hang's pupils shrank, his tone filled with shock and seriousness. "Isn't the puppet you have refined a little too dangerous?" Chapter 3008. The more he looked, the more apprehensive Mo Hung became. His expression became unusually solemn. Not only that, he even retreated a few steps, not daring to approach the puppet. He said seriously, "Puppet forefather, can you listen to my advice?" The puppet forefather was very respectful. "Please speak, Grandmaster Mo Hung." He also noticed that Mo Hang's expression was not right. Mo Hung said gravely, "If you do not want to attract disaster, please destroy this puppet as soon as possible or seal it forever. Do not install a heart in it." The puppet tribe's ancestor blinked and asked, "Why?" "This is the blood and sweat of our abyss puppet race." Mo Hung said gravely, "Although I do not know for what purpose your ancestor forged this puppet, for the sake of your descendants and the beings of the Nine-Star Civilization, please do not give this puppet a chance to use it. This puppet was forged with the skeleton of a top 10,000 Saint elite. Am I right?" Mo Hang's eyes were extremely sharp. Just like before, a glance at the 10,000 Tribulation's great scythe was enough to tell that it had not been successfully forged. He could also see the origin of this puppet at a glance. The puppet forefather's expression became even more respectful as he said seriously, "Grandmaster Mo Hung is truly the best artificer of the present age." "That's right. My ancestor found the rotting skeleton of a 10,000 Saint elite and decided to use it as the foundation to forge the world's best super puppet. After countless generations of effort and exhausting all resources, we finally succeeded." He stroked the puppet's body. Unexpectedly, the puppet turned a light blue color. It was blue hard iron. From its skin to its insides, the puppet was forged entirely from the precious blue hard iron. Given that blue hard iron could repair itself infinitely, this puppet was almost indestructible. Any injury could quickly repair itself. Grandmaster Mo Hung is making things difficult for us to give up. In other words, he could not give up the blood and sweat of countless generations. Mo Hung said, "Puppet forefather, you may not know, but that skeleton has been tempered for countless eras and absorbed a precious resource like blue hard iron. Its strength has surpassed the limits of its body. It may very well surpass the 10,000 Saints elite and reach that realm." The realm above the 10,000 Saints was self-evident, the realm of the sacred mountain Son of Heaven. Since ancient times, only a few people had reached this level. The 10 emperors of the sacred mountain, the Taichu Tao Lord, and the human ancestor. There were only 12 of them. What kind of terrifying monster are you? Do you understand now? Mo Hung felt that the situation was very serious. However, the puppet ancestor didn't think so. Instead, he said proudly, "That can only mean that our Abyss Puppet clan didn't waste our efforts." Emo Hung still wanted to say more, but he waved his hand. Master Emo Hung, there's no need to say more. I won't destroy it. Then he said, since everyone has used the fire reservoir, let's go to the living room and have some tea. In other words, he was ordering them to leave. They had no choice but to leave the fire pit and return to the living room. But Emo Hung was no longer in the mood to drink tea. He took a few sips absent-mindedly, then stood up to bid farewell to Suyu. On the way back, Suyu said to Old Ancestor Green Hat and Old Ancestor Yu Ming, thank you for your trouble this time. Please come to the Cauldron for tea another day. Ha, no problem. The two of them said their goodbyes and returned to their respective families to announce the day's great news. Suyu watched them leave, the smile on his face quickly fading. He said in a low voice, Emo Hung, is that puppet really that dangerous? Emo Hung nodded deeply. I'm just speaking conservatively. Suyu's eyes glowed. If there's a need, we need to infiltrate once and take that puppet away. The Abyss Puppet Clan is a little too naive. Oh, why do you say that? Emo Hung asked meaningfully. Suyu creased his brows. There is no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world. The Puppet Saint Clan has been crafting that puppet for countless years. Has there never been a leak? Hearing this, Emo Hung revealed a look of admiration. That's impossible, especially to the holy mountain son of heaven who controls the heavens. There are no secrets in the Nine-Star Civilization. Moreover, the Nine-Star Civilization has many powerful forces. It would not be difficult for them to find out about this puppet of the Puppet Saint Clan. But why had no one ever made a move? Because they were all waiting for the moment the puppet was born. Emo Hung said, this is also one of my worries. When the puppet is born, there will definitely be people fighting for it. If it falls into the hands of those with evil intentions, it will be a huge problem. Also, Emo Hung was a little hesitating to speak. Suyu said, is there something you can't say? Emo Hung nodded and said, I'm not sure if it's an illusion, but that puppet feels alive to me. Alive? Suyu's pupils shrank. If it was alive, wouldn't it be able to move on its own at any time? Of course, it could be that the puppet was built with the skeleton of a strong fighter from the 10,000 Saints, so it feels a little different. Emo Hung was not too sure. Suyu's gaze flickered. I'll deal with this puppet after I'm done with the matter at hand. The most important thing at the moment was to recover his body. Now that he had obtained the seal, there were many things he could do. Back in the territory, Bai Shui was fighting with Shanggu. The former was superior in terms of cultivation level, while the latter was stronger in a unique domain of the Ghost Buddha Union. It looks like you two are very close, Suyu said with a faint smile. Bai Shui and Shanggu snorted. Impossible. The two of them said at the same time, crossing their arms in front of their chests and raising their heads proudly. They did not like each other. Suyu smiled, tossing his palm toward Bai Shui. Catch! Bai Shui caught the seal and was overjoyed. You really succeeded? She examined it closely and confirmed that it was no different from the original seal. She could not contain her joy. I can finally answer to those old fools. Suyu smiled. Then when can we set off? He had already convinced the Puppet Saint Clan to join the alliance. The three great Saint Clans had also joined. The alliance was basically complete. The remaining alliance would be left to the sinful daughter. Anytime, Bai Shui held the seal, admiring it lovingly. Suyu looked at Shanggu, deep in thought. Shanggu should come with us. He did not want to borrow Shangji's strength, but Shanggu was being hunted by her enemies. It would be dangerous to leave her alone on the Tsangtian Mountain. He might as well bring it along. If there was any danger, he could help. Shangji's eyes lit up. That's great. I want to go to the Heavenly Law Prison too. Bai Shui said with a faint smile. You want to go to the Heavenly Law Prison? I support you. There was an unfathomable rumination in her smile. Shangji's hair stood on end when she saw his smile. She had a bad feeling about it. Chapter 3009. After that, Suyu left for the Cloud Desolate Territory's Stoneman Palace with Bai Shui and Shanggu. A month ago, the Cauldron, Qing Mu, and the Netherworld King had successfully leveled up, upgrading the Cauldron into a great family. But the Stoneman in the palace had already sold the seal to someone else, so they could only wait until this month to get it. When Suyu arrived, the stoneman palace that had been destroyed during the test had been rebuilt. A stoneman was outside, directing a group of recruited creatures to decorate the outer wall. Whoosh! When Suyu and the other two arrived, the stoneman looked back and was shocked. It was obvious that the stoneman had not expected Suyu to return alive. After all, he knew how dangerous the Huang family's territory he had given Suyu was. What surprised? Suyu's eyes flickered with a cold light. Where? I've been asking when the cauldron would come. The stoneman reacted quickly, taking out a space storage device with a smile. He looked around and stuffed it into Suyu's hands. He carefully observed Suyu's expression. In addition to the great family seal that I promised, I also made a seal for your cauldron sculpture. He took out another space storage device and handed it to Suyu. Seeing that the cold light in Suyu's eyes did not diminish, he smiled bitterly. How about this? Oh, I give you something else. Tell me about it. Suyu's eyes were still cold. The stoneman quietly took out a golden leaf. With this, you can ask the heartless old man about a secret of the world. The heartless old man? Suyu cast a questioning look at Bai Shui. Bai Shui took the golden leaf in disbelief. She looked at it again and again. How did you get the heartless old man's golden leaf? The stoneman looked at the golden leaf with a pained expression. I accidentally got it from a junior. I wanted to use it when I broke through. Now I'm giving it to the cauldron as an apology. Junior? Bai Shui was reserved. She turned around and handed the golden leaf to Suyu. For the sake of the golden leaf, you can spare his life. Suyu's eyes flickered, but he did not say much. He only stared at the stone man with a warning gaze, warning him not to play any more tricks. Then, he quickly left with the two women. After a long while, when he was sure that Suyu and the others had really left, the stone man wiped the sweat off his forehead. My goodness, the cloud-desolate territory is really not a place for people to stay. The mission hasn't even been completed, yet this killing god has already appeared. The golem muttered. It seemed that the news of the battle at Blood Mountain had gradually spread. The news that Cauldron Zun had killed two great sages of the famed Sword Sacred tribe had spread like wildfire. After the golem found out, his back broke out in cold sweat. When will the puppet saint race finish refining the puppet? The stone man sighed and said, The sooner you finish refining, the sooner I can complete the mission and leave. It turned out that the stone man was a descendant of the Son of Heaven who was in charge of monitoring the Sacred Puppet Clan. Their goal was to monitor the movements of the Sacred Puppet Clan. On the other side, Suyu couldn't help but ask, Who is the Heartless Old Man? Bai Shui replied, The Heartless Old Man is a very mysterious person, also known as the 100 Dawn Old Man. He knows everything in the world. Every 10 years, he distributes 100 golden leaves to the outside world. Those who obtain the golden leaves can ask him a question about the world, ranging from the whereabouts of an object to a question about cultivation, to the secrets of the Sacred Mountain Emperor. He knows everything. To think that the golem had a golden leaf in his hands. How unexpected, Bai Shui said in surprise. The secrets of the world? Suyu really wanted to know a lot of secrets. Where is he? Suyu asked. Bai Shui shrugged and said helplessly, This is one of the disadvantages of the golden leaf. The heartless old man's whereabouts are uncertain. The golden leaf will only be useful if you have the opportunity to meet him. If you don't, you're useless. That golem was willing to give you the golden leaf because he never had the opportunity to meet the heartless old man. Suyu blinked. Wouldn't that be useless? But it was better than nothing. If he met the heartless old man one day, it might come in handy. Keeping the golden leaf, Suyu and Sheng Gu hurried along with Bai Shui. Bai Shui had agreed to allow Suyu to participate in the Heavenly Law Prison mission, but Suyu had to make a trip to the Heavenly Law Alliance's Palace of Missions to accept the mission. The Heavenly Law Alliance was also in the heaven under the jurisdiction of Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower. However, the Heavenly Law Alliance was very powerful, occupying the most central Tianyuan cave. Once inside Tianyuan Cave, the Heavenly Law Alliance's insignia could be seen everywhere. Some of the factions even displayed their own insignia on a flag with the Heavenly Law Alliance's insignia on it. It was obvious how influential the Heavenly Law Alliance was in Tianyuan Cave. These factions are all branches of the Heavenly Law Alliance, right? Shunge had been in the Nine-Star Civilizations for a long time and knew many things. Bai Shui said proudly, "How about it? You want to compete with me?" Shunge did not care. You're only the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Law Alliance on the surface. You have no real power. What's so great about you? The Great Ones are the retired Alliance Masters of the Heavenly Law Alliance. They are the true soul of the Heavenly Law Alliance. Bai Shui glared at her angrily. She had clearly hit her soft spot. However, Shungu said, in terms of branches, the Heavenly Law Alliance should be the strongest among the Nine-Star Civilizations. Up until now, no other faction has been able to create as many factions as the Heavenly Law Alliance. Not only was Tianyuan Cave completely controlled by the Heavenly Law Alliance, but even the outside world was filled with branches of the Heavenly Law Alliance. Those branches would sooner or later send their elites to set up their own factions, forming families that were secretly controlled by the branches. It was just like how the Soulwood Sacred Clan and the Netherworld Sacred Clan would send their clansmen or factions out to form families and fight for new territories. The reason they did so was the same: a tall tree attracts the wind. If they were too powerful on the surface, they would definitely attract the attention of the Saint Mountain's Emperor. Hence, they had to develop in the dark. "At least you have some foresight," Bai Shui said. She then rolled her eyes at Suyu. "Behave yourself from now on. Don't run around recklessly. If something goes wrong, I might not be able to protect you." Just as Shungu had said, Bai Shui was only the Alliance Master on the surface. Her power was limited. The ones with real power were the old Alliance Masters who seemed to have retreated behind the scenes. They each controlled more than 10 territories under Tianyuan Cave's jurisdiction. If Suyu were to offend any of the old Alliance Masters, it would be troublesome. "I have never been one to cause trouble," Suyu said to himself. Bai Shui snorted. "Even if someone provokes you, you had better bear with it to avoid trouble." Suyu shrugged nonchalantly and followed her to the Heavenly Law realm of Tianyuan Cave. This was the core of the Heavenly Law Alliance. As soon as he entered the Heavenly Law realm, Suyu felt the probing of a great sage's power. Looking up, he saw a Tao artifact flying high up in the sky. The Tao artifact contained the power of a great sage, inspecting everyone who entered. Chapter 30:10. Suyu stood in his original position, immediately feeling an obscure energy sweep past his body. Immediately, his body glowed with a red light. It was not just him. Shunge did the same. The red light on both of their bodies flickered continuously. A group of people quickly approached from afar. It was a tall, beautiful woman with an outstanding aura. She wore a tight-fitting leather jacket, her hair tied up, giving off a heroic aura. Her cultivation level was at the peak of the ancient sage level, just a step away from the great sage level. The people following behind her were all ancient sages. "Who dares to barge into the Heavenly Law Alliance?" the tall woman scolded. Suyu and Shunge did not understand. Were outsiders not allowed to enter the Heavenly Law Alliance? Why did Bai Shui not mention this? Han Yinran, you purposely made things difficult for me so that you can replace me as the Alliance Master? Bai Shui's expression was coldly staring at the tall woman in front of her. This woman was called Han Yinran, a direct descendant of the old Alliance Master. She had been a candidate for the Heavenly Law Alliance Master, just like Bai Shui. However, Bai Shui had been lucky and barely won the battle to become the Alliance Master. Han Yinran had never been satisfied and had used her relationship with the Heavenly Law Alliance's old Alliance Master to be disrespectful to her, even going against her occasionally. Now, she was deliberately making things difficult for the friend she had brought. Not everyone in the Heavenly Law Alliance could enter, but the people brought in by the Alliance Master did not need to be checked. Han Yinran was purposely making things difficult for her. "Oh, so Alliance Master Bai Shui is here. Forgive me for not recognizing you." The tall woman looked at the short Bai Shui, her eyes playful. Bai Shui coldly said, "Han Yinran, don't go overboard, or it will be too late for regrets." She waved her sleeves, and the red light on Su Yu and Sheng Gu dissipated. "Let's go," Bai Shui grunted. Han Yinran watched them leave, snorting disdainfully. "I'll let you be arrogant for a while longer. Soon, you won't be happy anymore." In the center of the heavenly law realm, a giant lake lay across the land. From afar, it looked like a mirror embedded in the ground. There were living creatures traversing the lake. Beneath the lake is the Heavenly Law Alliance. That lake is a testing barrier. Any life form that passes through will be tested, explained by Shui, but she didn't say what the test was. So you didn't really care about it, as many factions had similar detection barriers. So it wasn't strange at all. He followed white snow through the lake, and the moment he crossed the lake, he felt a slight tingling sensation on the surface of his body. It was as if something was desperately trying to drill into his body. Suyu furrowed his brows. Instinctively, the energy in his body shook and dissolved the electric current that had penetrated his body. However, he didn't know how much of an impact this instinctive reaction would have. In the depths of the Heavenly Tao Alliance, in front of a crystal wall, more than a dozen Heavenly Tao Alliance ancient sages were staring at the flickering dots of light on the wall and recording them. The light spots were of different colors. Some were red, some were orange, some were yellow, and some were green. Different colors actually represented a person's strength. Red was the lowest level of cultivation that could be detected, and it was roughly at the Tao Lord level. Orange represented the middle stage of the Tao of Heaven. Yellow represented ancient sages. Green represented a great sage. As for the color above that, it was cyan. That was the strength of a 10,000 saint, but it rarely appeared. These ancient sages recorded the cultivation levels of all those who entered the Heavenly Law Alliance as a precaution. If a great saint-level expert were to appear, he would have to alert the old Alliance leaders in time and let them know. All of a sudden, an eye-catching green dot of light appeared on the crystal wall. The expressions of the ancient sages changed slightly. They immediately noted it down and said, "A great sage has entered. Confirm his identity." On the crystal wall, the green dot of light enlarged infinitely, revealing the outline of white snow. "So, the Alliance Master has returned." It was a false alarm. One of them laughed bitterly and immediately restored the crystal wall to its original state. However, right at that moment, a ray of green light appeared on the crystal wall again. Another expert with great saint strength? The ancient sages immediately zoomed in on the image and found that it was a petite little girl who was accompanying White Snow. "Record it down. The Alliance Master has brought back a great sage girl," one of the ancient sages ordered. Just as the recording was completed, something strange happened. The screen suddenly trembled violently. An extremely dazzling cyan light flickered rapidly across the entire screen, so blinding that people couldn't open their eyes. What's going on?" Several ancient sages hurriedly shielded their eyes and exclaimed in shock. The ancient sage official gasped and said, "Level 1 alert. A myriad saint expert has arrived." A 10,000 saint expert? The ancient sages were all shocked. Since the establishment of the Heavenly Law Alliance, this was the first time a 10,000 saint expert had come. "Quick, find out his identity immediately and find out who he is," the senior officer anxiously ordered. Ignoring the blinding green light, he immediately zoomed in on the image, hoping to see the figure clearly. However, no matter how big the image was, he still couldn't see it clearly. The only thing he could see was the vague silhouette of the other party. When the green light dissipated, the figure of the other party was even harder to catch. "Have you found out who it is?" Some of the ancient sages were still in a state of shock. The commanding officer shook his head calmly. "I can only see the gist of it. I'll report to the Hall of Elders." This matter was of great importance, and he had to inform the Hall of Elders as soon as possible. Suyu was completely unaware of this. He expressionlessly followed by Shui to the Heavenly Law Alliance's Hall of Mission. This place was bustling with people like a bustling market. Most of the people here were the leaders of various factions, and they had received precious missions from the Heavenly Law Alliance. "Greetings, Alliance Master." Just as they arrived at the entrance of the hall, The guards on both sides hesitated for a moment before kneeling down on one knee. Bai Shui completely ignored them, entering the Hall of Mission. There were over 100 windows in the hall, and each window was filled with thousands of people queuing up. Only one crystal window had no one in front of it. There was only a white-haired old man yawning in boredom. Bai Shui came in front of him and knocked on the table. "Call Fang Yuan out." Fang Yuan was none other than the Hall Master of the Hall of Mission, in charge of all missions. The Heavenly Law Prison missions were the highest level missions, and only some special factions and great sage factions could accept them. They were not given out at ordinary windows, and could only be given out at the crystal window in front of them. Furthermore, the Hall Master had to personally give out the missions. Thus, Bai Shui could not be bothered to speak to the old man at the counter, and directly called for Fang Yuan. "Ah!" The old man was startled, and said unhappily, "Who is being impudent, calling the Hall Master by his name?" But when he saw who it was, his eyes went wide, and he said in panic, "Ah, it's the Alliance Master." But soon after, the old man seemed to have thought of something, and the panic on his face receded. "Please wait for a moment. I'll inform the Hall Master." Not long after, the old man returned, but he did not bring Fang Yuan with him. "Hall Master Fang is waiting for you inside. Please come with me." Bai Shui's brows twitched, and she squinted her eyes. "Fang Yuan has guts." She called for Fang Yuan, but he did not come, and instead asked her to meet him. Chapter 30:11. She could sense that something was amiss. Even Su Yu, an outsider, felt that something was amiss. The Alliance Master was being treated with such disrespect. The shopkeeper smiled, his expression unchanged. "This is Hall Master Fang's will. I cannot change it." Bai Shui glanced at Su Yu, hesitating for a moment before saying, "Lead the way." If she were to go now, her dignity as the Alliance Master would be shattered. But she had promised Su Yu that she would help him obtain the Heavenly Law Prison mission. Right now, she could only grit her teeth and go. With the shopkeeper leading the way, Bai Shui, Su Yu, and Shungu entered the back hall. "Wait, you two stay outside." The shopkeeper looked at Su Yu and Shungu coldly. "They are my friends," Bai Shui said indifferently. It was not a problem for the Alliance Master to bring her friends into the back hall of the Hall of Mission. But the shopkeeper interfered. "Alliance Master, the Hall of Mission is an important organization of the Heavenly Law Alliance. How can an outsider enter?" A mere shopkeeper dared to argue with the Alliance Master, and even lectured her. Even if Su Yu was a fool, he would still be able to see where the problem lay. Shungu frowned. "Bai Shui, don't force yourself." Su Yu nodded. "You can come back later." Bai Shui's priority was to clarify the situation. Even if she had no real authority as the Alliance Master, and was only a decoration, it was not something anyone could take advantage of. But Bai Shui had already lost all her face. How could she lower her head? "Wait outside, I'll be right back." Her face was ashen as she entered the back hall. Passing through the layers of restrictions, in the garden at the center of the back hall, a man in a loose robe with a long beard and crystalline eyes was feeding the fishes in the pond. "Fang Yuan." Bai Shui walked over with a cold expression, the ground trembling as she walked. The fishes in the pond could feel Wu Xian's killing intent, jumping and causing ripples in the pond. The person with crystalline eyes was the Hall Master of the Hall of Mission. He pressed down with his palm, causing the fishes in the pond to calm down. When he turned around, he smiled like a spring breeze. "What made our Alliance Master so angry?" Bai Shui's expression was cold. "What do you think?" Fang Yuan laughed, his eyes narrowed into a slit. I don't know." Bai Shui stared at him. "Do you still have me in your eyes?" The last time he had left the Heavenly Tao Union, everything had been fine. But now that he had returned, the entire mission hall's attitude had undergone a drastic change. "Of course." Fang Yuan opened his eyes, his crystalline pupils reflecting Bai Shui's shadow. "Do you see it? Bai Shui is the Alliance leader in my heart." Bai Shui looked at him deeply and didn't want to waste time talking to him. The most important thing now was to obtain Su Yu's mission. As for settling the score, it would not be too late to do so in the future. "Give me a Heavenly Law Prison mission card," Bai Shui said. Every mission in the Heavenly Tao Union required one to obtain a corresponding mission card. Fang Yuan leisurely placed Jianeng's hands behind his back, saying leisurely, "Oh, Bai Shui, you just returned to Heaven Tao Alliance, and you came straight to my place?" Bai Shui had a bad feeling. Yes, so what? The smile on Fang Yuan's face had already disappeared. He said calmly, "Then, no one should have told you that the elders have already made a decision." Decision? Bai Shui's heart shook, the bad feeling growing. What decision? Fang Yuan did not say a word, taking out a fish scale and throwing it to Bai Shui. "See for yourself." Bai Shui grabbed it, his expression changing drastically. Why did the elders suddenly make such a decision? Fish scales were a decree issued by the Elder Council. It was the collective decision of the elders. The content was to temporarily freeze Alliance Leader Bai Shui's authority until a new Alliance Leader is elected. In a sense, Bai Shui only had the title of Alliance Leader and lost the little authority he had. Do you understand? Fang Yuan lightly sighed, but that sigh was not out of pity, but rather gloating. Back when you were the Alliance Leader, I was against it. Now, the Elder Council has finally made a wise decision. One of Fang Yuan's juniors was once a strong contender for the Alliance Leader position, but lost to Bai Shui. Regarding this, he had always been unhappy. Now that Bai Shui had finally lost the Alliance Leader position, the imbalance in his heart was finally released. Bai Shui gripped the scale tightly, but because she used too much strength, she was cut by the sharp edge of the scale. Until a new Alliance Leader is elected? Her heart felt like it was bleeding. For so many years as the Alliance Leader of the Heavenly Law Alliance, she had worked hard for the Heavenly Law Alliance, risking her life many times. The last time she chased after the Ninth Realm, she almost died. Thankfully, Su Yu was there and saved her life. All of this was erased out of thin air. "Give me the mission token." Bai Shui suppressed the waves in her heart, saying calmly. Fang Yuan laughed. "Then what identity will you be using?" The scale clearly stated that all of Bai Shui's authority had been frozen. Bai Shui looked at him deeply, saying, "I remember before I became the Alliance Leader, you were just a shopkeeper who was ostracized, right?" It was Bai Shui who saw him in a new light, promoting him to the Mission Hall Master. This was also why Bai Shui was so confident that she could get him the Heavenly Law Prison mission. But she did not expect that when her position fell, the first person to turn against her was not her competitor, but the subordinate she had promoted in the past. Fang Yuan hid his hands in his sleeves, his face showing no gratitude. Instead, he said proudly, "Apologies, I relied on my own abilities, climbing up step by step. Even without your promotion, I would still be here today." Shameless. Bai Shui only spat out 2 words. Back then, Fang Yuan was so poor that he could not even stay in a mission hall. How could he have any abilities? But what use was the word shameless to Fang Yuan? He could turn against her immediately. He had no sense of shame. It was impossible to expect him to be grateful. "All right, I will use my identity as a normal person to request you to give me a Heavenly Law Prison mission token." Bai Shui bit her lips, resisting the urge to cry. No one knew how sorrowful her heart was at this moment. "Oh, Alliance Leader doesn't seem to know how to ask for help." Fang Yuan laughed mockingly. Bai Shui secretly clenched her fists. She had already lowered her voice. What else did he want? Did he want her to kneel and beg? "All right, seeing that we have interacted before, I'll give you a mission token." Fang Yuan looked at the humiliated Bai Shui, knowing when to stop. No matter what, Bai Shui still had some power behind her, even though it had almost fallen. "Here." Fang Yuan took out a token. Bai Shui reached out to receive it, but just as she was about to receive it, Fang Yuan's fingers loosened, the token falling to the ground. "Oh, sorry, I dropped it. Pick it up yourself." Bai Shui clenched her fists even tighter. Had she offended Fang Yuan? Did he have to taunt her like this? Holding back the tears in her eyes, Bai Shui squatted down in humiliation, picking up the mission token and leaving the back hall without looking back. Fang Yuan's expression of relief was the reply to her back. Bai Shui wiped her tears, walking outside and saying, "I got the mission token." "So you did not take it," instead asking, "Did I make things difficult for you?" Bai Shui rolled her eyes, snorting, Who am I? Who can make things difficult for me? Take it. She did not say anything, stuffing the token into Suyu's hands. You got the mission token. Hurry up and go. If you need any help, you can find me anytime. Chapter 30:12. Suyu held the token, looking into her eyes. Are you really fine? No matter how he looked at it, the Division of Mission Division's master had no respect for her. It would not have been easy to obtain this token. Why are you being so wishy-washy? Where's the quick way of stripping me of my clothes? Bai Shui said arrogantly, her usual demeanor. Suyu's mouth twitched. This Bai Shui. But seeing that she was fine, Suyu relaxed. All right, thank you. If I successfully complete the mission, I will definitely return to thank you. Bai Shui giggled, her eyes shining brightly. Then I'll be waiting. Suyu laughed, bidding farewell to Shungu and leaving the Division of Mission. Even though she is rude and unreasonable, she is a good person. Along the way, Shungu had spoken up for Bai Shui. Suyu nodded. She is indeed a good lady. So you quickly stripped her of her clothes? Shungu asked with a smile that was not a smile. Suyu's expression froze, and he coughed. Cough, cough. There was a reason for that. Shungu had covered her mouth. As she laughed, she suddenly saw a group of people flying down from the lake's barrier. Leading them was Han Yinran, the person who had clashed with Bai Shui. Han Yinran was beaming, leading a group of people into the depths of the Heavenly Law Alliance. She looked extremely carefree. When she passed by Suyu and Bai Shui, Han Yinran paused. Oh, leaving so quickly? Did your Alliance master friend not show you her special privileges? Suyu creased his brows. What did she mean? He rolled his eyes. Bai Shui keeps a low profile and did not show any special privileges. But I can see that everyone respects her. His words were naturally a test. Hearing this, Han Yinran laughed. Respect? Are you blind or what? Someone whose status as the Alliance Master has been frozen and is about to be crippled. You tell me that she is respected? What? Suyu's gaze wavered. She had fallen to such a state. The nonchalant attitude she had displayed in front of him just now had been a forced act, right? He suddenly felt that the token in his hand was heavy. He didn't even need to think to know how difficult it would be for him to obtain the token from the unfriendly hall master of the mission hall, since he had lost his identity as the Alliance Master. The calmer she appeared to be, the more turbulent her heart was. You'd better leave quickly. Don't get into trouble with her, Han Yinran said and leaped away. Suyu understood what Bai Shui was implying. It was not as simple as freezing her position as the Alliance Master. Perhaps she had done something even worse. Shunga, we can't leave for the time being, Suyu said. Shunga nodded obediently and tilted her neck. It's really hard for Bai Shui to leave like this. The two of them returned to the mission hall, but White Snow had already left. On the other side, the Senate. This was where the core of the Heavenly Law Union was located, and the outside of the hall was densely packed with arrays that sealed it tightly. Not to mention barging in, it would be extremely difficult for anyone from the outside to even investigate it. At this very moment, the leader of the ancient sages was kneeling on the ground. Can I trouble Guardian Gu to pass on a message? I have an urgent matter to report. Outside the Senate, there was an old man in a straw cape guarding the only entrance. He slowly raised his head and glanced at the leader of the ancient sages. The leader of the ancient sages shuddered and trembled uneasily. The old man exuded a power that was at the level of a great saint. As a great saint, she was actually acting as a guard. Guardian Gu closed his eyes and said, This is a critical moment. The elders are all training in seclusion, and it is not appropriate for them to meet any guests unless there is something important that concerns the safety of the Heavenly Law Union. A year ago, all the elders in the Senate seemed to have sensed that something bad was about to happen. Hence, they all chose to train in seclusion. Before they went into seclusion, they had instructed that unless something major happened to the Heavenly Law Union, they were not to be disturbed. The leader of the ancient sages looked anxious. What I have to report is definitely not any less important than the safety of the Heavenly Law Union. The leader of the ancient sages said anxiously, The matter that I have to report is definitely not any less important than the safety of the Heavenly Law Union. Protector Gu had an indifferent expression on his face as he said indifferently, I do not wish to repeat myself. Senior Statesman Hall, Holy Land, please leave quickly. Seeing that the leader of the ancient sages was about to ask him to leave, the leader of the ancient sages had no choice but to say, there is a great saint expert here. If Guardian Gu thinks that the matter is not important, just pretend that I have never been here. After saying that, he stood up and patted his knees, ready to leave. Chila! A crack suddenly appeared in the space behind him. Protector Gu had opened his eyes, and his old eyes were filled with shock. Are you sure? Guardian Gu felt like he was sitting on a pincushion. He immediately stood up, and his expression was no longer as calm as before. The leader of the ancient sages said solemnly, Are you sure you want to see the record of the barrier? Guardian Gu's expression stiffened, and he quickly waved his hand. Wait here. I will report it immediately. It was better for him not to interfere in such an important matter. That would not benefit him at all. Inside the Senate, there were old black coffins, and each coffin was covered with a mysterious mass of air. Inside the coffins, it was completely silent, and there was no sound. Guardian Gu knelt in front of the coffins and said, Reporting to the 9 senators, the barrier inspector has reported that there are signs of a great saint expert's arrival. Clang! The lid of the coffin at the very end suddenly moved open, and a shriveled old man who looked like a corpse suddenly sat up. 2 emerald flames danced in the eye sockets of the mummy. He opened his mouth, and a hoarse and gloomy voice came out, as if a ghost was speaking. Why would a great saint expert come to my Heavenly Law Alliance? Is the inspection reliable? Guardian Gu said respectfully, I think that they do not have the courage to lie. The barrier inspector did not have the courage to use the matter of a great saint expert to disturb the Senate. Clang! Clang! The lids of the coffins were opened one after another, and they, who were in deep seclusion, were all awakened by this shocking news. Guardian Gu was secretly shocked. It actually caused the 5 senators to wake up. The impact of this news on them was too great. Bring him in. In a coffin, there was no corpse sitting up. Instead, it gave a vague order. Guardian Gu immediately went out and brought the ancient sage leader in. Greetings, senators. The ancient sage leader's heart jumped. These senators spent most of their time in the Senate, and they rarely showed themselves. Now, they actually saw 5 of them at the same time. Take out the barrier record. The ancient sage leader immediately took out a drop of water and tossed it into the air. Immediately, an extremely clear image was projected. On the surface of the crystal, a dazzling green light appeared without any warning. It was so bright that one could not open one's eyes. So. The few senators who were lying down stood up from their coffins, and they looked at the green light in the sky with solemn expressions. Creak! Next, the lids of 2 more coffins opened, and 2 extremely old people sat up from within. Their bodies were even a little rotten. They were senators with even more seniority, and they had already lived for 7 to 8 epochs. It's a great saint expert. The 3rd coffin old man said in a hoarse voice. His face was so rotten that only his bones were left. But I can't see them clearly, he said in a hoarse voice. At this moment, the sound of fingernails rubbing against the coffin lid came from the 2nd coffin. In the spacious Senate, it seemed abnormally eerie. Chapter 30:13. The 7 corpses looked over and climbed out of their coffins, respectfully standing in front of the coffin. Senior Elder Han, the 7 said respectfully, You are awake? A deep voice came from the coffin. Look! Whoosh! A domain filled with the power of the world was emitted from the coffin, entering the blurry image in the air. The blurry silhouette immediately became clear. Su Yu, dressed in a black robe, appeared in front of them. No, to be exact, the black robe gradually became transparent, revealing the figure of an extremely beautiful woman. Heavenly Prince, Mirror Flower. The 7 corpses cried out in shock. That face belonged to Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower alone. No, that is only a part of Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's body. She is not fully recovered, Senior Elder Han said in a hoarse voice from the coffin. Even so, it was enough to make them feel terrified. Why had Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower come to the Heavenly Law Alliance? Had they discovered the Heavenly Law Alliance's secret? Senior Elder Han, what should we do? Should we welcome her or? The 7 elders asked. Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's sudden arrival had disturbed their calm thoughts. Senior Elder Han said slowly, since Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower has come secretly, we will pretend that we do not know. We just need to keep an eye on her and react accordingly. Yes, the 7 elders said. Senior Elder Zhou, who was ranked last, volunteered. I will temporarily come out of seclusion to monitor Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's movements and take over the Heavenly Law Alliance. At this critical moment, an elder must be present. Senior Elder Han nodded in the coffin. Yes. Also, quickly complete the replacement of the Alliance Master. Yes. Senior Elder Zhou left the Elders' Hall alone. The moment he left the Elders' Hall, his flesh and blood immediately became plump, and he soon became a normal living creature. He took a deep breath and muttered, "What an eventful time. At such a critical moment, Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower has arrived." A misty light appeared around his body. When the light dissipated, he had already appeared in the Heavenly Law Alliance Master's palace. Inside the palace, a person was silently sitting on the Alliance Master's throne, which normal people could not approach. Bai Shui, Senior Elder Zhou was slightly surprised. You have returned? Bai Shui's eyes were motionless, as if she was dead. Her body was gone. She silently took out 2 items. One was the Heavenly Law Alliance's seal, while the other was the seal of a statue. Return it to its owner, Bai Shui said calmly. Grand Elder Zhou immediately stepped forward, grabbed the 2 items, and carefully examined them. He let out a long sigh of relief. Finally found them. While feeling gratified, he couldn't help but criticize, we can give the Heavenly Law Alliance a false alarm. If these 2 items were lost, it would be a huge problem. To be precise, trouble had already come knocking on their door. Not long ago, a large number of suspicious life forms had successfully entered the 9-star civilization with official documents issued by the Heavenly Law Union. When the Heaven Sun Palace found out about this, they ordered the Heavenly Law Alliance to provide an explanation. The so-called Son of Heaven Palace was the top stoneman palace in the heavens, controlled by Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower. According to the region, the Stoneman Palaces were divided into the Heaven Stoneman Palace, the whole Stoneman Palace, and the Realm Stoneman Palace. For example, the Stoneman Hall of the Cloud Desolate Territory was the Realm Stoneman Hall that the Cauldron measured. The Golem Palace that was 1 level higher was the 10,000 Venerables Cave Golem Palace. It was the highest level of the Golem Palaces in the Cloud Desolate Territory. The highest level was the Heaven Stoneman Palace, which ruled the 10 whole Stoneman Palaces. They were warned by the Heaven Stoneman Palace, which showed how serious the situation was. However, they had already explained it, so the Heaven Stoneman Palace did not pursue the Heavenly Law Alliance's responsibility. In the future, you can't act recklessly anymore, understand? Grand Elder Zhou criticized. Bai Shui said quietly, "There's no future anymore, right?" Grand Elder Zhou's body stiffened slightly, and he said with a complicated expression, "Already know?" It was almost certain that Bai Shui would never have the chance to touch the big seal or the seal again. She was no longer the Alliance leader. Bai Shui stood up from the Alliance leader's throne and said, "I know some, but I don't know some." She looked at Grand Elder Zhou and said, "Back then, you were one of the people who supported me to become the Alliance leader. On account of our many years of friendship, can you tell me why?" Bai Shui asked. The change of the Alliance leader was related to the stability of the Heavenly Law Alliance. Before she left, there was no news, but after she returned, her privileges as the Alliance leader were already frozen. There had to be an unknown reason for her sudden change. Grand Elder Zhou was silent for a long time before he waved his sleeve and set up a thick isolation barrier. He sighed and said, "The Grand Elder has already passed away." "What?" Bai Shui's petite body trembled, and she said in shock, "How could it be so sudden?" The Grand Elder was the oldest Alliance leader of the Heavenly Law Alliance. His cultivation was extremely high, and he was second only to the 10,000 saints. For many years, the Heavenly Law Alliance had been able to develop smoothly because of the Grand Elder. Otherwise, it would have been destroyed by other factions with bad intentions. Back then, Bai Shui could defeat all the competitors and become the alliance leader. She had the support of someone like Grand Elder Zhou, but most importantly, the Grand Elder had personally recommended Bai Shui to be the alliance leader. That was the key to turning defeat into victory, defeating Han Yinran, who was the most competitive, and becoming the new alliance leader. She pushed back and sat on the throne in a daze, unable to accept the truth in front of her. Why did the Grand Elder pass away? With the Grand Elder's cultivation, he could live as long as heaven and earth. As long as he was not targeted by stronger experts, there is no such thing as passing away. Grand Elder Zhou sighed and said, "Eternal life, in a sense, is a kind of torture." The Grand Elder had lived for 9 eras, and he had witnessed the destruction and reconstruction of the 9-star civilizations several times. He had witnessed the rise and fall of the human race, and he had long lost his passion for life. The Grand Elder chose to break through to the 10,000 Saints level. If he succeeded, he would lead the Heavenly Law Alliance in a final battle. If he failed, he would leave his cultivation to the remaining Grand Elders and let them continue to protect the Heavenly Law Alliance. Bai Shui's shoulders trembled, and she felt an indescribable sadness in her heart. It turned out that the Grand Elder had voluntarily left the world and entered reincarnation. Now, the most experienced person is Grand Elder Han. Grand Elder Zhou revealed the truth. Grand Elder Han hoped that his descendant, Han Yinran, would become the alliance leader. Now that the Grand Elder had left, he was the person with the highest authority in the Heavenly Law Alliance, and the other Grand Elders had to give him face. However, Bai Shui, you don't have to worry. Although you're no longer the alliance leader, with your great sage cultivation, the Heavenly Law Alliance will not mistreat you. You might even become the protector of the Grand Elder Hall, Grand Elder Zhou said. Bai Shui's eyes became misty, and she gently shook her head. There is no need. I came back not to beg you, but to inform you of something. A letter slipped out of her sleeves and flew towards Grand Elder Zhou. Grand Elder Zhou opened it and frowned. You want to leave the Heavenly Law Alliance? Chapter 30:14. Give me a reason to stay. Bai Shui's expression was lonely, and her eyes were filled with desolation. A good alliance master was forced to abdicate her position. Where's her dignity? No matter how good the treatment was, it would be difficult for her to shamelessly stay in the Heavenly Law Alliance. Although Grand Elder Zhou had expected this, he still felt that it was a pity. Bai Shui was a great saint, and she could become a Grand Elder with just a few years of cultivation. Leaving the Heavenly Law Alliance now was a loss that no one wanted to see. He also did not approve of Grand Elder Han's actions. Was it worth it to lose a great saint in order to support his own descendant? Leaving the Heavenly Law Alliance is a serious matter, and I cannot make the decision. Grand Elder Zhou put down the letter and said, "It is best to let the group of Grand Elders decide together. Can't I leave even if I want to?" Bai Shui was furious. "Of course you can." A mocking voice came from outside the palace. Han Yinran led a group of ancient sages and barged into the alliance leader's palace. She raised her head and looked dignified, like a peacock that had just won. "The prerequisite is that I am happy," Han Yinran said domineeringly. Bai Shui said in disdain, "Who do you think you are? Do I have to make you happy if I want to leave?" Han Yinran placed her hands behind her back. She was elated, and with a faint smile, she took out a golden scale. "White snow, oh white snow, do you think that the Heavenly Law Alliance is a place that you can leave whenever you want to?" Grand Elder Zhou looked at the golden scale and said in shock, "A secret letter from a Grand Elder?" A secret letter was a top-secret order that could only be issued by the Grand Elder, and the other Grand Elders had no right to ask about it. Now that the Grand Elder had passed away, only Grand Elder Han could issue a secret letter. Take a look yourself. Han Yinran flicked her finger, and the golden scale flew into Bai Shui's hand. Bai Shui looked at the scale suspiciously, and her pupils constricted. "How dare you?" Grand Elder Zhou's gaze swept over the scale, and he quickly grabbed the contents. His pale face suddenly changed as he asked in a low voice, "Han Yinran, is this real?" He didn't want to question the authenticity of the scale, but the content of the scale was too shocking. "Then you can ask Elder Han." Han Yinran was not afraid, and she looked at White Snow's expression playfully. Bai Shue's expression changed again and again. The letter contained Grand Elder Han's orders. After White Snow stepped down as Alliance leader, she would be sent to the Heavenly Dao Cemetery to guard the cemetery for an epoch. She wouldn't be allowed to take a single step out. The mausoleum was the place where the elders were buried. The aura of the Heavenly Dao there was thin, and few people went there. Guarding the mausoleum, there was no difference from being imprisoned. Elder Han stripped Bai Shue of her position as the Alliance leader, but he was also worried that she would hate him and come back for revenge. That was why he was imprisoned in the mausoleum in disguise, making it so that he would not be able to effectively increase his cultivation for an epoch, making him unable to pose a threat. His intentions could not be said not to be malicious. However, I feel that you used to be our Heavenly Law Alliance's Alliance Master. For you to end up in such a miserable state, your loyal subordinates will definitely be disappointed. So, I plan to let you go. Han Yinran had a smile on her face, but no one felt that the smile was kind. Bai Shue was shaking with anger, her face ashen. With the death of the Grand Elder, she would end up like this? Was it lamentable or laughable? The prerequisite is to make you happy? Bai Shue asked. Han Yinran smiled. Of course. Bai Shue looked straight at her and clenched her fists. Enduring the humiliation, she asked, "What do you want?" Han Yinran revealed a look of anticipation and said, "Do 3 things. Speak. First, personally hand over the Heavenly Law Alliance seal and the sculpture seal to me, the new Alliance Master." Grand Elder Zhou frowned. Han Yinran was not the Alliance Master yet, so how could there be a handover? Wasn't this just an insult? Bai Shue hesitated for a moment before silently picking up the seal and sculpture and handing them to her. "For you." Han Yinran crossed her arms in front of her chest. "This is your handover? Do you even have me, the Alliance Master, in your eyes?" She looked straight at Bai Shue. "Kneel down on one knee and call me Alliance Master." Creak. Bai Shue clenched her teeth so hard that creaking sounds could be heard. This was too much. Who had ever heard of a previous Alliance Master needing to kneel down to the next Alliance Master during a handover? It was the other way around. However, Bai Shue did not want to stay in the Heavenly Law Alliance any longer. She was completely disappointed. Even Grand Elder Zhou, who had once supported her, could only watch from the sidelines without any support. It was obvious that the Heavenly Law Alliance could not find anyone to support or help her. Even if she had to die, she had to leave this place. Plop. She knelt down on one knee and offered the 2 seals with both hands. "Alliance Master Han, please accept them." "That's more like it." Han Yinran took the 2 items. She was overjoyed. "What's the second thing?" Bai Shue stood up and asked. She did not know what kind of unreasonable request Han Yinran was going to make. Han Yinran looked at Bai Shue and said with a faint smile, "The second thing is to hand over your hairband. You've been acting like a child all day. It's really annoying." Bai Shue was silent for a long time. "The hairband is something my mother left for me. So what? If you want to guard the mausoleum, you can keep it." Han Yinran was overbearing. That hairband was not an ordinary item. It was a peerless Dao item that could freeze one's appearance forever. She had been coveting it for a long time. The reason why Bai Shue always maintained the appearance of a child was because of the existence of this Dao item. Bai Shue clenched her fists. In the end, she silently apologized. Her eyes were filled with tears as she took off the hairband. When the hairband fell off, her soft long hair flowed down like silk. Bai Shue's body underwent a huge change. In the blink of an eye, her short stature became tall, slender, and exquisite. The tender face of a little girl also became the exquisite face of a classical beauty. Although she was not a peerless beauty, she was still a rare beauty that could topple cities. Grand Elder Zhou was stunned. He could not believe that the Alliance Master, who always looked like a child, was actually such a beautiful woman. Even Han Yinran was astonished by what she saw. She never thought that Bai Shui would be so beautiful in real life. She really knew how to hide. An indescribable jealousy surged in her heart. She was extremely unwilling. Even though she had obtained the position of Alliance Master, she still lost to Bai Shui in terms of appearance. The third condition. Listen up. Han Yinran snatched the hairband and said coldly, I want you to destroy your own cultivation. What? Grand Elder Zhou's eyes burned with anger. This Han Yinran was getting more and more excessive. People who crippled their own cultivation probably wouldn't be able to leave the Heavenly Tao Union. If they didn't meet with mishaps, they would remain mortals, forever unable to leave the Heavenly Tao realm. However, he shut his mouth helplessly and did not meddle in this matter. Grand Elder Han covered the sky with one hand. He wanted to help, but he could not. Chapter 30:15. Bai Shui's face was ashen. She could no longer suppress the anger in her heart. Han Yinran had no intention of letting her go. From the start, she had been toying with her. Han Yinran, you must keep your word. Bai Shui warned. She clenched her fists tightly. The power of a great sage turned into a layer of waves that surged around her. Han Yinran was not afraid. Instead, she became even more vicious. What? You want to go against the Alliance leader's decision? Don't forget, I'm the Alliance leader now. You are nothing. Bai Shui stood there without moving. She only stared at Han Yinran. The latter played with her hairband. Han Yinran, keep my word. Once the third request is fulfilled, I will let you leave the Heaven Law Alliance. Rather than crippling her own cultivation, she might as well be imprisoned in the cemetery. At least, she could keep her life. Han Yinran, I have endured for so long. Why must you force me? Bai Shui took out a needle. Grand Elder Zhou saw this and knew that it was not good. He wanted to stop her, but it was too late. Han Yinran's eyes flashed. It was as if she had found a great opportunity. Her eyes were filled with a sinister smile. Men, Bai Shui attempted to assassinate the Alliance leader. Such a disgraceful person should be killed on the spot. She had no reason to toy with Bai Shui. Her goal was to force Bai Shui to take action when she could no longer endure it. Then, she would be charged with a crime that she would never be able to recover from. In truth, she was worried that Bai Shui would endure it and enter the cemetery to guard the mausoleum. A living Bai Shui was a threat to her position as the Alliance leader. Only a dead Bai Shui could make people feel at ease. Whoosh! The ancient sages behind her immediately rushed forward and protected Han Yinran. Bai Shui was filled with anger. She felt like her chest was about to explode. It was fine if she was stripped of her position as the Alliance leader. It was fine if she had to guard the mausoleum for an era. It was fine if she had to kneel down and hand over the Alliance leader's seal. It was fine if she had to take away the only thing that her mother had left for her. But why did she still not let her go even after she had given in? Why? Why? His suppressed grief and indignation turned into absolute killing intent. Dying, Bai Shui leaped and turned into white snowflakes. Those snowflakes were formed by the Tao artifact needles in his hand. Every snowflake was filled with countless needles that could hurt people invisibly. She had already lost even the slightest bit of trust in the Heavenly Law Alliance. Since the Heavenly Law Alliance wanted him dead, what was there to be reluctant about? What rules were there to abide by? They would kill their way out and determine the Heavenly Law Alliance. Of course, before he left, how could he let Han Yinran go? Whoosh! White snow instantly blanketed the ancient sages and Han Yinran. In an instant, all of the ancient sages at the very front were frozen into ice, and their vitality was extinguished. Every single ancient sage had a look of agony on their faces, because they weren't really frozen to death, but their souls were destroyed by the countless needles. Han Yinran was taken aback. She did not think that her ancient sage guards would be killed without putting up any resistance at all. Bai Shui's hidden strength was much stronger than expected. You forced me to do this. White Snow's eyes were filled with killing intent. She waved her finger, and a snowflake quickly enveloped Han Yinran. However, Grand Elder Zhou was present. He obviously would not watch Han Yinran be killed. Otherwise, he would not be able to answer to Grand Elder Han. Stop! Grand Elder Zhou sighed. He rubbed his palms together, and a golden spinning top appeared behind Bai Shui and slammed into her. Even though Bai Shui had a Dao artifact to protect her, she was still unable to withstand the power of the spinning top. Puff! The snowflakes around Bai Shui immediately dissipated and fell to the ground, turning into countless needles. Bai Shui's body was pierced by the spinning top, and a huge hole appeared in her body. Blood flowed out, and she looked extremely miserable. Bai Shui's internal organs were destroyed, and a mouthful of blood spurted out of her throat. Her body was also knocked forward by the huge force, and she fell to the ground. Bai Shui's entire body was in intense pain, but her killing intent did not diminish. She pounced toward Han Yinran and died. Pudong. However, when she was in midair, a force of gravity descended from the sky and ruthlessly kicked her to the ground. It was Grand Elder Zhou. He stepped on Bai Shui and said with a stern face, "Bai Shui, you've gone too far." Bai Shui's body was already in intense pain, and now that Grand Elder Zhou had stepped on her wounds, the pain was unbearable. However, Bai Shui's heart was in even more pain. She turned her head, her eyes filled with tears of sorrow. "I've gone too far? So I've gone too far. Ha ha!" It was as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world, and she laughed maniacally. That laughter was filled with despair, anger, sorrow, and deep mockery. Grand Elder Zhou's eyes flickered with a trace of pity, and he could not help but close his eyes. When he opened them again, they were cold and emotionless. No matter what Han Yinran did, she is still the Alliance leader. You assassinated the Alliance leader, and that is an unforgivable crime. Grand Elder Zhou said with an incorruptible face. It was as if he had been fair when Han Yinran had been so overbearing. "Ha ha ha ha. If you want to kill me, then do it. There's no need to talk about righteousness with me." Bai Shui clawed at the ground with her fingers, her eyes filled with hatred. "My biggest regret in life is that I worked for the Heavenly Law Alliance." Bai Shui stared at Han Yinran like a demon. "If there is a next life, I will be the Heavenly Law Alliance's mortal enemy, and I will destroy the Heavenly Law Alliance." The deeper the betrayal, the greater the hatred. Bai Shui's betrayal was enough to make her remember it even after she reincarnated. Han Yinran was frightened by her disheveled hair and eyes filled with hatred, and her heart trembled. Such a person must not be given a chance. Otherwise, she would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. She suddenly had evil thoughts and said, "Grand Elder Zhou, what are you waiting for? Chop off her head and destroy her soul." The Heavenly Law Alliance does not have such a traitor who disobeyed the Alliance leader. Grand Elder Zhou did not hesitate. He raised the spinning top and smashed it towards Bai Shui's head. At this moment, Bai Shui looked at the bright sunlight outside the Heavenly Law Alliance, and her eyes seemed to reflect some hazy memories of the past. It was warm and hurried, clear and blurry. It seemed like a very long time ago, but it also seemed like it was yesterday. Her heart was filled with disappointment. Perhaps this was the end of her life, but suddenly the sunlight at the entrance of the palace shook. A figure covered in warm sunlight walked over from afar. He walked very slowly, but every step he took was like stepping on people's hearts, causing them to palpitate. "Su, you?" Bai Shui thought she was seeing things, and she blinked her eyes. But the figure was too blurry, and she could not see it clearly. Then, a familiar yet strange voice entered her ears. "How can you trample on my people like this?" It was an emotionless question, but because of this, it caused people to tremble and feel an indescribable fear. It was as if under the extreme calmness, there was an extreme emotion being suppressed. Chapter 30:16. Elder Zhou creased his brows. Guards. Were the guards outside blind? The Alliance Master Palace was such an important place. How could they allow outsiders to enter? But the outside of the palace was silent, devoid of any sound. "Guards!" Elder Zhou shouted again, but there was still no movement. He had a bad feeling about this. Could it be? If you are calling for the guards, there is no need. So you walked over with his hands behind his back. Wherever his footsteps passed, the ground turned to ice. The air in the surrounding hall froze as well, turning into a vast expanse of white cold mist. When a person had control over various areas, every word and action could affect the laws of heaven and earth. Elder Zhou stepped on the white snow, unable to free himself. He could only casually throw a bolt of great sage-level energy at Suyu. In the blink of an eye, a faintly discernible, irregular air current swept towards Suyu with a power that could tear apart space. Suyu did not say a word, single-handedly taking out the great scythe of 10,000 calamity. Creak! The 10 golden heads on the scythe all appeared. Whoosh! With a swing of the scythe, a terrifying arc of energy shot out from the great scythe of 10,000 calamity. In an instant, the great saint energy that was sweeping over was destroyed into nothingness. The energy wave did not diminish, speeding toward Han Yinran and Elder Zhou. Han Yinran sucked in a breath of cold air. Even a great saint-level powerhouse could be withstood. Moreover, the energy wave gave her an unavoidable sense of fear, as if it came from a higher being that could completely crush her. What she could not accept the most was that this attack came from Bai Shui's unremarkable friend. Her heart was filled with complex emotions, but the emotion she felt the most was jealousy. This is the Heavenly Law Alliance. How dare you be so insolent? Han Yinran did not retreat. She took out the Heavenly Law Alliance seal she had just obtained and tossed it into the air. The 4 words, Heavenly Law Alliance seal, immediately separated, forming a net in front of her. But the power of the great scythe of 10,000 calamity could already kill great sages. She was too naive to think that a mere seal from a great family could block it. Crack! The 4 words quickly shattered, and the aftershock swept over without slowing down at all. At this moment, Han Yinran felt the threat of death. Her body trembled, letting out a terrified scream. Out of the way! At this critical moment, Grand Elder Zhou let go of white snow and rushed in front of Han Yinran. He took out his spinning top Dao artifact and activated it on the spot. Chi. After spinning violently, the spinning top barely blocked the scythe's attack. However, one could faintly see a series of damaged marks on the top. Grand Elder Zhou glanced at him, his expression indescribably grave. "Who are you?" Suyu strode toward him. Elder Zhou clenched his teeth and dodged to the side. He did not face Suyu head-on. Instead, he secretly activated the communication signal, requesting for help from the Hall of Elders. He might be able to win by himself, but there was no need to take the risk. Suyu came in front of Bai Shui, looking at the serious injuries on his body. The cold energy surrounding his body was even thicker. "I only left for a short while, and you're going to harm my friend like this?" If he had hesitated a little longer and arrived a little later, would White Snow have truly died? He never expected that the Heavenly Law Union would be so harsh. Grand Elder Zhou said with a serious expression, "This is an internal matter of the Heavenly Law Union. You should stay out of it." Bai Shui tugged at his sleeves with both gratitude and anxiety. "Leave quickly. You must have informed the Hall of Elders. It will be difficult to leave later." Is the Heavenly Law Union a place where you can come and go as you please? Grand Elder Zhou moved to the side, blocking the exit of the Alliance Master's palace. With his abilities, it would not be difficult for him to hold off Bai Shui until the fighters from the Hall of Elders arrived. Suyu imbued a gush of energy into Bai Shui's body, then fed her a healing elixir. He then slowly put her down. "Who said that I am leaving?" Suyu slowly stood up. With his back facing Senior Elder Zhou, he said these extremely sinister words. A gush of chaotic energy flowed from his palm, entering the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations. The white handle was burning with a layer of pale white flames. The 10 golden heads opened their eyes at the same time. He had not used his full strength in his previous attack to avoid injuring Bai Shui. Now he had no more worries. Grand Elder Zhou looked at the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations, his heart thumping. The great scythe of 10,000 tribulations gave him a savage, ancient, and bloodthirsty feeling. It was as if he was not facing a Dao artifact, but an ancient, ferocious beast. "Sir, you barged into the Heavenly Law Union first," Grand Elder Zhou said. "You have already committed a grave mistake. If you continue to use force, it will be difficult to turn back. He retreated slightly, his entire body tensed. Suyu's expression was indifferent. He slowly turned around, staring at Grand Elder Zhou with an icy gaze. So, killing my friend is the right thing to do. That is a matter of the Heavenly Law Union. Sir, you do not have the right to interfere. Grand Elder Zhou argued. Suyu raised the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations, calmly saying, "You will know soon whether I have the right or not." Creak! The great scythe of 10,000 tribulations swung down. This time, it was no longer a ripple. Instead, it was a giant net covering the entire area. Grand Elder Zhou's expression turned serious. "You are being impudent." He clenched his hands, causing the spinning top to spin rapidly, attacking the giant net. Creak! In an instant, the spinning top created countless black sparks as it rubbed against the giant net, as if it would break in the next moment. But the giant net suddenly constricted, wrapping around the spinning top. It then continued to shrink until the giant net completely passed through the spinning top. Crack! The spinning top split into pieces, turning into fragments that fell to the ground. Wah! Grand Elder Zhou, whose mind was connected, spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was filled with fear. My Golden Emperor's spinning top. The spinning top was one of the 10 great sect-guarding Tao artifacts of the Heavenly Law Union. It was indestructible, able to break through all of the enemy's direct attacks. Usually, no matter how intense the battle was, there would not be a single scratch on it. But now, it had been completely destroyed. At this moment, Grand Elder Zhou finally knew who he was fighting against. Go! He grabbed Han Yinran, turning to escape. How could he still dare to fight against Suyu? But if he wanted to leave, he had to ask Suyu first. Creak! Another giant net appeared, enveloping Grand Elder Zhou and Han Yinran. Han Yinran's face turned pale with fright, shouting, "Sir, we can talk things out. We do not have any deep grudges." Suyu was expressionless. If you were willing to talk things out, how would Bai Shui end up in such a state? He had never spoken up for Bai Shui. Not only that, he had even helped the wicked harm Bai Shui. The injuries on Bai Shui's body were all caused by this seemingly neutral old man, who was actually siding with Han Yinran. Creak! The giant net arrived in an instant, pouncing toward Grand Elder Zhou. Chapter 30:17. The giant net touched him, causing him to shriek in fear. At that critical moment, 2 cold grunts could be heard. How dare you? How dare you cause trouble in the Heavenly Law Alliance? Whoosh! 2 corpses with auras above Elder Zhou's descended from the sky. They each held a Tao artifact, grabbing the giant net and pulling it back. In this way, Grand Elder Zhou managed to escape from the gates of hell and hurriedly dashed forward for some distance. The 2 dried corpses stood in front of Grand Elder Zhou as well. They were the 7th and 8th ranked elders. Elder Zhang, Elder Chun, be careful of this person's Tao artifact. It is very powerful. Elder Zhou reminded them. The 2 elders recalled their Tao artifacts, only to discover that they were slightly damaged. The 2 of them were shocked. Elder Zhou, take Han Yinran and leave. Go to the Elder Palace and ask Elder Han to come out of seclusion. The 2 elders realized that they had encountered an unprecedentedly powerful enemy. They might not be able to suppress him with just the 2 of them. Elder Zhou nodded. Be careful. Don't fight him head-on. Try to delay him. After speaking, he took Han Yinran with him. Suyu was expressionless. I said, there is no need to leave. Thump! Suyu stabbed the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations into the ground, then extended his hands. A giant golden bell appeared above his head. It was covered in dragon markings, emitting a powerful pressure. In terms of grade, only Grand Elder Han's Tao artifact could be compared to it. EMO, Soul Calming Bell. The 2 elders gasped in shock. How could they not recognize the famous Tao artifact of the Sword Saint clan? But hadn't this Tao artifact fallen into the hands of a mysterious person? And that mysterious person had killed 2 absolute great sages of the Sword Saint clan with his own power. Is that person from Shui Shan? The expressions of the two grand elders changed drastically as they cried out involuntarily. Suyu was expressionless. You only found out now? Thump. As he spoke, he activated the EMO soul calming bell. A long and violent sound of the bell swept across the land. The sound of the bell was filled with a soul-destroying power. Run! The two of them anxiously roared and immediately retreated. Moreover, they used all of their soul defense methods. However, if the Yimo soul calming bell was so easy to defend against, how could it be so famous? In just an instant, the defenses on their bodies were completely shattered. Then, a terrifying soul fluctuation penetrated their bodies. After a miserable shriek, the two grand elders clutched their heads and screamed in pain, no longer able to fight. Even though they didn't die, their souls had suffered heavy injuries. Without an epoch of time, they wouldn't be able to recover. In the distance, Grand Elder Zhou and Han Yanran were quite far away. Although they were not directly killed, they were still affected. Grand Elder Zhou was fine, but Han Yanran was almost killed by the soul attack. She was bleeding from her 7 apertures, clutching her head and howling in pain, but she was mostly terrified. Go! Grand Elder Zhou growled. Enduring the pain in his soul, he dashed toward the Grand Elder Hall. As he sped along the way, he sent out distress signals. Chilla. In front of him, the space was torn apart, and Suyu walked out of it, still holding the great sickle of 10,000 tribulations in his hand. Grand Elder Zhou's heart turned cold, and he growled, Do you really want to become enemies with the Heavenly Law Alliance? Suyu calmly said, No, you're not qualified. After saying this, he once again raised the great sickle of 10,000 tribulations. This was the final attack. No other Grand Elder could save them in time, and Grand Elder Zhou, who had lost his Dao artifact, could no longer block Suyu. What do you want for you to let us go? Grand Elder Zhou said. Bai Shui is not dead. She is merely injured. Suyu calmly said, Why didn't you say this earlier? Vengeance for vengeance, resentment for grievances. Ever since Suyu had appeared, Grand Elder Zhou had looked down on him with the attitude of the Heavenly Law Alliance. He did not even have the attitude to admit his wrongs, much less discuss it. Speak. Grand Elder Zhou lowered his head. If you wish for me to apologize, I can't agree. Suyu let out a mocking laugh. You want me to just apologize after beating her up and injuring her? You have taken advantage of all the advantages in the world. Grand Elder Zhou's face trembled. All right, speak. What do you want? Suyu pointed at Han Yanran, who was behind him. First, execute her. In terms of repulsiveness, it was naturally the cold and merciless Grand Elder Zhou. But in terms of hatred, it was Han Yanran. She had used all sorts of methods to humiliate and harm Bai Shui. In the end, she had even forced Han Yanran to make a move, using the opportunity to execute Bai Shui. Bai Shui's hatred would not be appeased if she did not kill such a vicious woman. On the other hand, Bai Shui might not have minded Grand Elder Zhou's actions. No, Grand Elder Zhou, protect me. Grand Elder Han will be here soon, Han Yanran said in fear. At that moment, her heart was beating wildly, filled with regret. If she had not been so ruthless, why would Bai Shui's friend be so furious? But how could she have known that the unassuming friend Bai Shui had brought back would be so terrifying? No, Grand Elder Zhou resolutely refused. He is a direct descendant of Grand Elder Han. You cannot kill him. So you could not be bothered to waste his breath. He raised the great scythe of 10,000 calamity, preparing to attack. Since he did not want her to die, he would let her die with him. Grand Elder Zhou's eyelids twitched, immediately saying, Wait. But Suyu had already lost his patience. The great scythe of 10,000 calamity was quickly being activated, with no intention of stopping. Grand Elder Zhou was burning with anxiety. He steeled his heart and turned to look at Han Yanran. The latter was so frightened that she stumbled, her face pale. Grand Elder Zhou, don't. Wait a little longer. Grand Elder Han will be here soon. Grand Elder Zhou glanced at the two heavily injured Grand Elders out of the corner of his eye, and then at the scene of devastation. His heart was filled with hatred. He had warned her not to go overboard, but had Han Yinran listened? She had used the fact that she was the descendant of Grand Elder Han to do as she pleased. Now, she had kicked a metal plate. Not only had she harmed 2 elders, but she had also caused the Heavenly Law Alliance to have a mysterious and terrifying enemy. This kind of junior could not accomplish anything, but was good at spoiling things. What was the point of keeping her alive? She might cause even more trouble in the future. Han Yinran, don't blame me for being merciless. You have gone overboard. Grand Elder Zhou closed his eyes, extending his hand and grabbing Han Yinran's neck. Han Yinran struggled with all her might, saying, "No, I was wrong. I will not dare to do it again. Please let me go, Creek." Unfortunately, her neck twisted, and she was mercilessly killed by Grand Elder Zhou. Han Yinran probably did not expect her retribution to come so quickly. Grand Elder Zhou turned around, looking at Suyu. "Anything else?" Suyu retracted the great scythe of 10,000 calamity, calmly saying, "Break one of your own arms." Grand Elder Zhou did not hesitate. His body shook, breaking one of his arms. At once, blood flowed, and he could not help but kneel on one knee in pain. Clutching his arm, he said, "Leave quickly. When Grand Elder Han arrives, you will not be able to leave even if you wanted to. He has absorbed the Great Elder's energy, and you are no longer able to fight him." Chapter 30:18. Bai Shui's injuries had mostly recovered, but the damage to her soul could not be healed in such a short time. Seeing Suyu return, Bai Shui lowered her head in shame, biting her red lips as she cried, "I've let you see a joke." Suyu did not say a word, placing a headband on the back of Bai Shui's hand. Bai Shui's eyes widened, suddenly looking up. What did you do to Han Yinran?" The headband had clearly fallen into Han Yinran's hands. "I gave her the ending she deserved," Suyu said calmly. Bai Shui immediately stood up, ignoring the pain in her body as she grabbed him and left. "You've got into big trouble. How could Elder Zhou and the rest let you off after killing Han Yinran? How could Elder Han let you off?" But when she left the hall, she was stunned. Apart from the 2 elders who were howling in pain on the ground, Grand Elder Zhou was also clutching his blood-soaked arm. In that short moment, he had heavily injured 3 elders? No, that was under the premise that he had shown mercy. Is it worth it?" Bai Shui asked. "Is there a need to offend the Heavenly Law Alliance for me? I am just a dispensable pawn, and you need the Heavenly Law Alliance's yin-yang gate." Bai Shui knew how much effort Suyu had put in to activate the yin-yang gate, and how many twists and turns he had gone through. Now that he was about to succeed, he had broken off relations with the Heavenly Law Alliance because of her. Even if he completed the Heavenly Law Prison mission, he could forget about obtaining the right to use the yin-yang gate from the Heavenly Law Alliance. Grand Elder Han would never allow that to happen. It doesn't matter if it's worth it or not. Suyu pointed at his heart. "As long as this tells me that it is the right thing to do." Bai Shui's heart warmed, as if a torch had suddenly appeared in a world of ice, warming her heart. She was at the lowest point of her life. The Heavenly Law Alliance had betrayed her. The elders who had supported her had betrayed her, and she had nowhere else to go. However, Suyu had sacrificed his dream, which was within reach, just to save her. The warmth from the bottom of his heart flowed from his heart to his eyes, turning into a stream of hot tears that trickled down his cheeks. "Fool! I am just a stubborn and unreasonable woman. Why do you have to treat me so well?" Suyu laughed. "You have no home to return to now. Do you want to come with me?" It was impossible for Bai Shui to continue staying in the Heavenly Law Alliance. Bai Shui rubbed her eyes, feeling touched. "As long as you don't mind, I can work for you in the future to repay your kindness." She gripped the headband tightly, but after thinking it over, she did not put it back on. Instead, he carefully stored it in a storage artifact. "The me of yesterday has become the past. From today onwards, I will be the new me." Bai Shui no longer appeared as a 10-year-old girl. Instead, she returned to the world in her current form. Of course, Suyu would not mind the addition of a great saint. He turned around with his hands clasped behind his back and said, "Let's go then." As he took a step forward, he activated his spatial domain and swept the two of them to the Heavenly Law Union's barrier. Shunga was squatting there, holding her chin with both hands and mumbling, "Why aren't you back yet? Master wouldn't have eloped with that stinky girl, right?" The more she thought about it, the more Shunga felt that it was possible. She stood up and prepared to search for it. "What are you mumbling about?" An irritated voice came from a space in front of her, following which the space was torn apart, and Suyu and Bai Shui walked out. Shunga hurriedly covered her mouth, shaking her head. "I wasn't the one who said you eloped with someone, not me." As she was speaking, Shunga suddenly saw an exceptionally tall woman standing beside Suyu. She glanced over and saw that it was a beautiful woman with a slender figure, skin as white as snow, clear eyes, and alluring red lips. "Master, who is she? Didn't you go to help that stinky girl, Bai Shui? Why did you bring back another woman?" Shunga said sourly. It had only been a short while, and yet another beautiful woman had come. "Who are you calling a stinky girl?" The tall woman crossed her arms in front of her chest, looking down at the short Shunga from above. Her eyes were filled with hostility. In that instant, Shunga recognized her from the look in her eyes. You are Bai Shui? Very surprised? Very surprised? Are you feeling defeated?" Bai Shui bowed, a smile that wasn't quite a smile. How could Shunga take her provocation? She patted her chest and laughed. "I admit that I'm surprised. I never thought that the stinky girl was actually a vixen in disguise." "But what do you mean by frustrated?" Shunga said nonchalantly. Bai Shui smiled. "Is that so? You really don't feel frustrated? What's there to be frustrated about?" Shunga said, but she could not help but look at Bai Shui. The more she looked, the more guilty Shunga felt. "Her legs are longer than mine, her chest is bigger than mine, even her skin is fairer than mine. Take care of me from now on, little one." Bai Shui smiled proudly and patted Shunga's head, only to be threatened by the latter. Bai Shui let out a peal of laughter. At that moment, Bai Shui realized that she still preferred this kind of life. Even though she had no power, she was happier here than in the Heavenly Law Alliance. "Let's go take a look at the Heavenly Law Prison." Suyu grabbed their waists, preparing to use the space domain to leave. Even though there was no point in completing the mission, he still wanted to take a look at the Heavenly Law Prison and meet the disciples and comrades of the Rin Ancestor. But it would not be easy for them to leave. With a dull thud, multiple coffins tore through the air, leaving behind afterimages. The coffins tore through the air, descending with the power to destroy the world. 5 coffins surrounded them. "Bai Shui, you have disappointed us." A dull voice came from one of the coffins. After what had just happened, Bai Shui had seen the true face of the Heavenly Law Alliance. "Thank you for your disappointment. I have already drawn a clear line between myself and the Heavenly Law Alliance." "Oomph. Ungrateful. The Heavenly Law Alliance has nurtured you. But what have you done? Colluding with outsiders to injure an elder and kill the new Alliance Master. Are you worthy of the Heavenly Law Alliance's nurturing?" She stood on the moral high ground and reprimanded Bai Shui, ignoring the truth. Bai Shui smiled coldly. She could not be bothered to explain how Han Yanran had wanted to kill her, or how Elder Zhou had killed her. There was no need to reason with these people. They would continue to attack her with other fallacies. "So what if I am? I am ungrateful. What do you want?" Bai Shui said with disdain. A thunderous voice came from another coffin. "How dare you? Really, rebel? Don't think you can do whatever you want just because you are an expert." Bai Shui did not say a word, walking to Suyu's side.